The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. A huge investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Maroon 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area as a danger zone, and sailors were encouraged to avoid it. Some people blame all disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Bermuda area. This gas tends to set off, and when it happens, bubbles start forming on the surface of the water. These gas eruptions can interrupt the ability to float and can easily sink a ship. Because of this chemical reaction, there won't be even a trace left. Underwater volcanoes are said to be another possible explanation for the Japanese Dragon's Triangle. In fact, they can take down even small islands. Luckily, nobody lives there. It's a pretty common thing in this area that some of them disappear underwater and others appear out of the blue because of seismic activity. You'll never find the Dragon's Triangle on any official map of the world, so nobody's quite sure about how large it is in reality. In July 2015, 2 teenagers disappeared after setting sail off the coast of Florida. There's some mystery about what the 2 teens were really getting up to. They told their parents that they were just going to fish, but they told their friends that they were crossing to the Bahamas. Shortly after they left, a line of thunderstorms moved towards the area, and the boys were never heard from again. A massive search was conducted, but sadly, nothing was found. 1 year later, the pair's boat was found off the coast of Bermuda with a broken iPhone and some personal effects left inside. One of the most popular and bizarre theories trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charles Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. Previously, the compass wouldn't work well in the Bermuda Triangle since the lines of the two poles coincided here, true north and magnetic north. But if you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. But the magnetic north is constantly shifting, and now it's far beyond the triangle. No legend says pirates of the last centuries operate in the Bermuda Triangle, or that the Flying Dutchman makes other ships disappear. A popular theory is that ships travel to the distant past or future through a time portal in the Bermuda Triangle. Fortunately, these are all myths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's hulls with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holds and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. They say the main reason why this place is so enigmatic must be the magnetic fields that form this ominous triangle. Ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to the high concentration of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Magnetic fields tend to shift their position, so do tectonic plates and even the continents, even though we never notice it. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Seems like the Bermuda Triangle has an alternate not only on Earth, but even in space. Spacecraft usually don't disappear into thin air though, like there's no air. This anomalous area is really large and stretches right above the South Atlantic. It occupies the area from Chile to Zimbabwe, and sits right at the point where Van Allen radiation belts are the closest to the surface of our planet. The Earth has two such belts, which come in handy trapping the particles that shoot in from the Sun. They do a great job protecting the Earth from radiation. The magnetic field there is lower, so it allows the Earth's radiation belt to come closer to the surface. Whenever a satellite passes by, it will be exposed to radiation, which might lead to serious damage. So, no satellite can take pictures of it. The South Atlantic anomaly is part of the Earth where natural radiation just flows out of control. Still, there is little evidence that all these triangles are really dangerous. Many believe the Bermuda Triangle itself has been proven time and again to be nothing but a work of fiction. In fact, some shipwrecks, such as the Ellen Austin, gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century, while nobody even thought of drawing a triangle in the Bermuda area before that. The mystery was popularized by science fiction writers and became a common myth, while no serious research proved it any more dangerous than other parts of the world's ocean. So, the crew of the Ellen Austin back in 1881 weren't even aware of the Bermuda Triangle back then, let alone afraid of it. What do you think?
In 1945, 5 TBF Avenger aircraft took flight for a routine training exercise around the Bermuda Triangle. In the middle of the exercise, the planes were struck by intense rain and heavy winds, despite the clear weather forecast. The pilots became extremely disoriented and radioed the base to report that their navigational equipment had stopped working. The last thing the base heard was, "When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." And then, static. The 5 planes and their 14 passengers were never seen or heard from again. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night When he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. In March 1918, carrying a crew of 306 people, the USS Cyclops left Barbados and headed home to Baltimore. The ship passed through the Bermuda Triangle on its journey and was never seen again. The Cyclops never issued any distress signal and disappeared without any explanation, making it the largest ship to go missing in the Bermuda Triangle. No wreckage has ever been found. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. In the year 1800, a large sailing vessel called the USS Pickering departed from the U.S. on its way to the West Indies. The ship sailed into the Bermuda Triangle along with its 90-man crew and was never heard from again. The USS Pickering was the first ever confirmed ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle. It's believed that the ship was taken out by a storm, but because no wreckage was ever found, we'll never know for sure. William Shakespeare's famous play, The Tempest, was inspired by the Bermuda Triangle. Sailors returned home to England to tell stories of treacherous waters near the Bahamas where ships mysteriously disappeared. These stories made it back to the bard himself and inspired his final play about a storm at sea transporting a ship to a mysterious land. The shipwreck in Shakespeare's play is based on the 17th century ship Sea Venture. The ship was carrying supplies from England to Virginia when it was struck by a massive storm in the Bermuda Triangle. Sea Venture was battered by the storm for 3 days and barely made it to the shore. Survivors of the wreck were stranded on a desolate stretch of Bermuda for 9 months. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. A huge investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. Because the Bermuda Triangle isn't a recognized place, no one knows its exact location or size. Some people believe it covers around 500,000 square miles around the Bermuda area. Other people believe the triangle is as big as 1.5 million square miles. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. The Bermuda Triangle is home to the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, the Milwaukee Deep. The area has a maximum depth of over 27,000 feet. This is one of the deepest points in the ocean floor, but still not close to the massive 35,000 feet of the Mariana Trench. But the huge depth might explain how such little wreckage has been found. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. In the year 1800 again, the ship USS Insurgent was on patrol when it stopped briefly at a coastal base before heading back out to sea. That was the last time USS Insurgent was ever seen. A severe storm reportedly struck the West Indies around that time. It's believed that storm was so powerful, it could have caused the sinking of both the USS Insurgent and USS Pickering. which vanished around the same time. Like the Pickering, no wreckage of the Insurgent was ever discovered. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Joshua Slocum was an extremely talented sailor. He was the first person to ever sail single-handedly around the world. But sadly, he was no match for the Bermuda Triangle. In November 1909, Slocum said goodbye to his wife and set off on one of his usual winter voyages to the West Indies. Slocum's wife reported him missing after several months passed without any contact. It's said that he called in at Miami to resupply before vanishing into the Bermuda Triangle. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. They call it the Dragon's Triangle. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Kaiomaru 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area as a danger zone, and sailors are encouraged to avoid it. On the ocean floor, decomposing organisms let off large concentrations of methane gas that gets trapped under the water. This gas can build up until, boom, it ruptures. The gas surges up to the surface and erupts. If a ship was in the area of one of these ruptures, the water would become much less dense and cause the ship to sink rapidly and without warning. Scientists believe this could be the cause of the many disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. While this theory makes a lot of sense, it doesn't seem too likely. The United States Geological Survey has stated that no large releases of gas are believed to have occurred in the Bermuda Triangle for the past 15,000 years. In July 2015, 2 teenagers disappeared after setting sail off the coast of Florida. There's some mystery about what the 2 teens were really getting up to. They told their parents that they were just going to fish, but they told their friends that they were crossing to the Bahamas. Shortly after they left, a line of thunderstorms moved towards the area, and the boys were never heard from again. A massive 15,000-mile search was conducted, but sadly, nothing was found. 1 year later, the pair's boat was found off the coast of Bermuda with a broken iPhone and some personal effects left inside. One of the most popular and bizarre theories trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charles Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. Why has only the Bermuda Triangle become famous? You know, there are other mysterious triangles where ships disappear for strange reasons too. The triangle we're going to visit may seem to you much more dangerous and scarier than the Bermuda one. People tell stories about extraterrestrial ships, portals to another dimension, or Atlantis in the Bermuda region, and you've probably heard all this stuff. But the triangle I'm talking about has other legends. Imagine that you're sailing on your boat and notice a round ship in the middle of the endless ocean. A mysterious woman is standing on the deck of this strange ship, staring at you. Yeah, such stories go around the Dragon Triangle. And if you try to figure out something about this place, you'll find that even the triangle's location is a mystery. This place is located near the Japanese coast in the Pacific Ocean. The triangle extends from Japan to the Bonin Islands and touches the Philippine Sea, but this is not its exact geolocation. Some records say the triangle is 70 miles east of the Japanese coast, while others say it's about 750 miles away. This difference in coordinates is because the region where the triangle is located is not marked on any maps. The exact dimensions of these waters are still unknown. The Dragon's Triangle is also called the Pacific Bermuda Triangle. It's like an evil twin brother of the latter, but it's older. The fact is that reports of strange disappearances of ships in this region appeared much earlier than reports about the Bermuda Triangle. For the first time, people found out about the mysterious power of this place back in the 13th century. The grandson of Genghis Khan sent 40,000 people on ships toward Japan to conquer the country. Their route passed through the Dragon's Triangle. However, these people didn't reach the shore because of typhoons in this zone, so all the ships sank. After this incident, Genghis Khan's grandson changed his mind about attacking the country. Immediately after that, people in Japan began to believe that this place had magical powers. In the modern world, divers and archaeologists have tried to decide whether this story is true. They've explored the bottom of the triangle and found artifacts from the sunken Mongolian fleet. A few centuries later, in the early 1800s, another story happened there. Sailors who traveled through the Dragon's Triangle saw a strange ship that looked similar to Japanese equipment for burning incense. There was only one person on board. It was a mysterious woman. However, no one could find out who she was. In the 1940s and 50s, reports about ships disappearing in the region of the Triangle began to arrive. Fishing boats and large ships went missing. Japan sent a research ship there to find out the cause of the disappearances. But that vessel, with 31 crew members, was also gone. The wreckage of the research vessel was discovered later, but no one found the crew members. People began to recall the legends about this place. According to one of the myths, dragons live under the surface of the ocean. They destroy ships and take people to satisfy their hunger. Such stories are thousands of years old. But over time, in addition to fairy tales, scientific hypotheses began to appear. Scientists have tried to find out what's so peculiar about this place. One suggested that cold and hot currents mix and then pass through areas that attract strong electromagnetic waves. And when these mixed hot and cold currents meet these waves, they form electromagnetic interference. Electronic equipment on ships begin to break down, and navigation devices fail. At this moment, a storm starts, and vessels become helpless. They can't send distress signals or determine their location. Another theory says that underwater volcanoes are at the bottom of the triangle. They spew hundreds of thousands of tons of magma, churn the waters, and create giant waves. Seismic activity often happens off the coast of Japan, so this theory is quite logical. Also, volcanic activity can explain ancient legends about underwater dragons. Besides, islands often appear and disappear in this region. When magma cools down underwater and creates layers, they move upward and form land. Then, during the next eruption, they collapse and go underwater. But some of them remain. So imagine some ship sailing, and then a huge island rises from underneath and cracks its hull. Perhaps methane hydrates destroy ships. These substances come out of the Earth's crust, form large bubbles in the water, then rise and explode. Such a giant bubble can damage a ship's hull or even destroy a vessel. Anyway, scientists don't know for sure the reason for the disappearance of boats yet. And in general, all those mysterious cases that have occurred in that place are most likely nothing more than legends. The Dragon and Bermuda Triangles are in the oceans, but how about a triangle in a lake? It's located between Michigan and Wisconsin, right inside Lake Michigan. In 1950, a plane with 108 passengers on board disappeared without a trace while flying over the lake. When the search began, rescuers found a few pieces of the aircraft on the water. Besides the plane, Many ships have gone missing there. Sometimes people disappeared into thin air, right from boats. One such case happened in 1937. The ship was sailing through the Lake Michigan Triangle when Captain George Donner went to rest in his cabin. 3 hours later, one of the crew members knocked on the door to wake the captain, but no one answered. When it became clear that something was wrong, the sailor walked inside, but saw no one there. The captain seemed to have vanished. The crew couldn't find him. Until now, the disappearance of Captain George Donner remains an unexplained mystery. It may be all fiction, but the Lake Michigan Triangle is creepy. And how about a triangle that's on the ground? This is the Bennington Triangle. It's located in the southwestern part of Vermont, USA. This is a place you really should avoid. There are many scary stories around it. It's up to you to decide whether they're true or not. In November 1945, a group of hunters passed through this area. A 74-year-old man was walking ahead of the group, and right in front of several people's eyes, he made a step and disappeared. No one could find him. The hunters called rescuers, but they didn't help. In December of 1946, several students went camping. An 18-year-old girl led a large group. She walked a few feet forward to figure out where to go next and disappeared. The tourists called the police. Officers began searching the area, and the FBI joined them. They got some information from locals living in nearby towns. They said that some girl similar to the description had been walking with a man much older than her. The two of them left by car and were never seen again. Soon, a similar vehicle was found not far from New York. The car was burned, so the police and experts couldn't confirm that the missing girl was inside. 3 years later, a man disappeared on the territory of the Triangle. He was waiting for a bus at the last stop. When the bus arrived, he got inside, but didn't reach his destination. He didn't get off the bus and didn't appear anywhere else. The police couldn't find any trace of the missing man. But the most terrible case occurred in 1950. Near the Bennington Triangle, a woman was driving a truck with her young son. She stopped the car and left for a few minutes to drop by a store or gas station. But when she came back, there was no one in the car. The police were combing the area. In the search, they used sniffer dogs, which managed to get on the boy's trail. The dogs followed the path and stopped at one place in the forest. The trail ended there. And you know what that spot was? The place where that student girl disappeared in 1946.
Far out in the open sea on a perfectly calm day, a dot appears on the horizon. It grows in size as it gets closer, and soon you can see it's a ship. But when you look at it through the spyglass, chills go down your spine. The vessel is in perfect condition and its cargo is on board, but it's completely devoid of people, drifting listlessly along the current. That was what the captain of the Ellen Austin saw in 1881, and what brought his crew so many sorrows. In December of the previous year, the Ellen Austin, a big 210-foot-long ship, left the port of Liverpool to make its trip to New York. The ship was carrying a load of people hoping to find a better life in the New World. Captain A.J. Griffin took the vessel due southwest for a shorter voyage, and a few weeks into 1881, they found themselves north of the Sargasso Sea, known for its lack of winds and strong circling currents. Ships that got caught in those could lose control and keep on drifting in circles until they were dragged into the center. From there, they'd be incredibly lucky to get back past the currents, but more often than not, they stayed in the desolate desert of the sea forever. Worse still, the area belonged to the notorious Bermuda Triangle, which was already known to take down ships and make them disappear without a trace. The ship's crew were nervous, afraid of being in such a dangerous area so close to a sea that could bring them to a standstill. And ominously, Some of the Sargasso Sea's calm must have escaped it, because the Ellen Austin lost its speed one day and fell adrift without the winds. It was fine, though. They had ample provisions and were still on schedule. Captain Griffin was walking around his ship, giving orders in a voice full of calm authority, and both his crew and passengers trusted him completely. But then, the lookout shouted from above that a ship was in sight. And indeed, when the captain looked in the direction the man was pointing, he saw a small schooner moving slowly into view and towards the Ellen Austin. As it came closer, it became apparent that the way the strange vessel moved wasn't right. The captain frowned and examined it through his spyglass. The schooner was untouched, but eerily silent. There wasn't a single soul on board. Derelict ships weren't that rare in the Atlantic at the time, but neither were pirates. Captain Griffin decided to wait and watch. After 2 days, the schooner was as quiet as always, and Captain finally thought it was fine to move in. He took a small team of sailors and boarded the stranded ship. There was nobody there indeed, but luck seemed to be on Griffin's side. The precious cargo of mahogany wood was still in the holds. The captain returned to the Ellen Austin and ordered his select men to take the smaller ship along to New York. The crew's spirits arose with the prospect of riches awaiting them upon arrival. When the winds blew strong again, the Ellen Austin continued its voyage, with the unnamed vessel tagging along. But after a couple of days, the ships were caught in a powerful storm and got separated. The wind, rain, and waves beat them for several days in a row. When the weather finally cleared, Captain Griffin ordered to find the schooner. They searched for another day until they finally found it adrift, way off the course. Griffin hailed his men on board the smaller ship, but no one answered. A party of sailors went to investigate and returned with their faces white with fear. The whole prize crew went missing in the storm. The captain wasn't one to lose such a valuable find, though, and ordered another team to take control of the schooner. Reluctantly, the sailors obeyed, and the two ships continued their voyage. They agreed to stay as close as possible to one another and ring their bells at set intervals at night to let each other know they were fine. Several nights went all right, with bells ringing reassuringly every hour. But one day, a thick blanket of fog fell on the sea and almost completely blocked their vision. The ships went on regardless and started sounding their bells earlier. When night came, the fog was still there, but the bells were the sound of life. Until they stopped. Captain Griffin rang the bell once, then twice. No answer. The crew lit the fires and looked out into the sea intently, but the fog hadn't lifted, and they couldn't see a thing in the swirling abyss beyond the ship's board. Nobody could sleep that night, and they waited in silence until the break of dawn. The first rays of sun made the fog slowly disperse, and the whole crew went to the edge of the deck with heavy hearts. There was still hope in them, until the last strands of the mist went away, revealing a vast, calm, and most importantly, empty ocean. The nameless schooner was gone, and so was the second team of the Ellen Austin sailors. The ship sailed the rest of the way to New York in grave silence. Once it arrived at the port, the passengers were only too happy to leave the vessel, and no one so much as turned their head as a goodbye. That was the ship's last voyage as the Ellen Austin. That same year, it was sold to a German shipping company and renamed Meta. No one ever found the derelict schooner or the sailors that went missing with it. And that would probably be the end of this mysterious and unresolved story, if it held at least a little bit of the truth. In reality, none of the enigmatic things in the narrative actually happened. The Ellen Austin did indeed leave Liverpool and headed southwest to New York, and its captain was really A.J. Griffin, taking people to the American continent. But from here, the story falls apart. First of all, the ship went way too far to the north to pass the Sargasso Sea so closely. There was simply no reason to make a detour so broad. Even though the westerly winds were strong, it was still faster to take them head-on than to go in a southerly direction. So the Ellen Austin was probably nowhere near the Sargasso Sea and the Bermuda Triangle. Secondly, the triangle itself has been proven time and again to be nothing but a work of fiction. In fact, it gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century, while nobody even thought of drawing a triangle in the Bermuda area before that. The mystery was popularized by science fiction writers and became a common myth, while no serious research proved it any more dangerous than other parts of the world's ocean. So the crew of the Ellen Austin weren't even aware of the Bermuda Triangle back then, let alone afraid of it. Thirdly, the whole story was told and retold by magazines and mystery-loving personalities with ever-changing details. It first appeared in a newspaper in 1906 and already had the date wrong. The article said the voyage took place in 1891 instead of 1881. Later, the story resurfaced in 1935 on the radio with the wrong name of the captain. It was Baker, not Griffin. The date was also off, saying the trip was taken in August 1881, when the Ellen Austin was already renamed Meta. The legend grew upon with other strange details, such as the ship's route from London to Newfoundland, which was never the case. But the final debunking came from the archives of Lloyd's of London, the marine insurance market that keeps all logs of trade and emigration ship routes. The documents there say that on February 1881, the Ellen Austin completed its cross-Atlantic voyage to New York without incident. Captain A.J. Griffin off-boarded the ship with all his crew hale and hearty and declared no loss of hands during the trip. The voyage took over 2 months because the ship had to fight strong westerly winds pushing it back towards Britain. The crew reported no strange encounters on the way, and the whole thing was as boring as could be. And even the passengers must have been smiling when they stepped on the American soil at last, unaware of the phony baloney story they were about to be a part of.
The moon shines brightly and illuminates the black water of the ocean. Thick fog descends on it in ominous silence. Then, it's suddenly broken by the creaking of wooden boards, followed by a rippling of the waves. Through the fog, you see the outline of an old large ship. Its hull is rusty, and a strange cold is coming from it. But the most unsettling thing is that there's no one on the deck. The ship sails without a crew. No, this isn't a mythical Flying Dutchman, but a very real ghost ship. September 2nd, 2019. The British Royal Navy's ice patrol ship, called the HMS Protector, sails through the calm waters of the Atlantic Ocean. The time is 11 p.m. Some of the ship's crew are on deck, while others are sleeping in their cabins. The captain steers the ship and looks straight at the horizon. The sky is lit up by an orange twilight, and clouds float in the distance. Suddenly, against this beautiful landscape, one of the sailors notices the black silhouette of an unknown ship. The captain slows down and steers the ship a little closer to the mysterious vessel. This is an old cargo ship, 250 feet long. Attempts to contact the crew members lead to nothing. It seems the unknown boat is floating in the ocean by itself. There's no one on board, at least, no one alive. The deck of the ship creaks from rocking on the waves. The sun sinks below the horizon, and it gets dark. The ship looks terrifying. British sailors don't dare to climb on that strange deck. They take a photo, post it on the internet, and sail away. Many people on the internet will assume the sailors met a real ghost ship. 5 months later, we're in the village of Ballycotton in County Cork, Ireland. A local leaves the house early in the morning to go for a daily run. Music in his headphones, fresh cool air, and a scenic route are ideal conditions for a good workout. The jogger runs along the road on the coast of the Celtic Sea. There was a strong storm last night, and now the sea looks calm. The man runs along the top of a low cliff and notices a huge vessel. An old rusty cargo ship 250 feet long lies on the beach, right among the rocks. No people on board. It seems the ship has been here for ages, but the local is sure this vessel wasn't here yesterday. A little later, it turns out this is the same ship that the sailors from the HMS Protector saw 5 months ago, thousands of miles from this place. The cargo ship, called the Alta, was built in 1976. Nobody knows who used it all this time and for what purposes. It's only known that in 2017, the ship was purchased by a new owner and marked with the flag of Tanzania. It's important to say that almost all cargo ships are equipped with AIS, Automatic Identification System, which is needed to track ship movements in the ocean. Since 2015, something strange started happening with the Alta's AIS. The ship disappeared from the satellites, then reappeared again. Over the past few years, this ship had changed several names and flags. It's not surprising that its AIS shut off and turned on numerous times. It's said that some of those who disable AIS on their ships do so to hide outlaw activities. The ship's captain, whoever it was, clearly didn't want to show the Alta's movements. As AIS showed in 2017, the ship had sailed near Greek port cities. The Alta made 12 stops in 3 such cities in different parts of Greece. Then, the AIS signal disappeared, and 10 months later, the Alta reappeared near the northern coast of Africa, 1,200 miles from Greece. In September of 2018, the ship was sailing about 1,400 miles southeast of Bermuda, and at that time, the crew members started having problems. There were 10 people on board the Alta. On September 19th, the ship's engine failed right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The nearest shore was very far away. The ship began to drift. As days passed, the crew couldn't fix the vessel. Food supplies were running low. The crew started to panic and tried to contact someone. The situation got worse as a strong hurricane was approaching the place where the ship broke down. Crew members contacted the U.S. Coast Guard. On October 2nd, a helicopter headed towards the ship. Food and water were unloaded on the Alta. This was enough for the crew to bide their time for several days. About a week later, a rescue boat sailed about 1,500 miles to reach the Alta and help the stranded sailors. Shortly before the start of the hurricane, American rescuers succeeded. The entire crew of the wrecked ship was taken to Puerto Rico. The Alta remained drifting in the ocean. After a while, another ship arrived to tow it to the coast of Guyana. Then, something went wrong again. The ship was hijacked. Who did it and why remains a mystery to this day. But then, for some unknown reason, the thieves decided to abandon the ship and left it to drift in the ocean. For almost a year, the ship's location couldn't be tracked. Then, in September 2019, the vessel was found by the British Royal Navy. How the Alta was able to cover the distance across the Atlantic and wash up on the coast of Ireland is unknown. An investigation has been launched in Ireland. It's necessary to identify the owner of the vessel and find a responsible person to take on the task of towing it. But no one has since been found. Once, an unknown person called the Irish authorities and introduced themselves as the owner of the ship, but didn't provide any evidence. Several barrels of oil were found on board the Alta. To dismantle the ship, the Irish authorities will need to spend about 10 million euros. Local residents are annoyed by the wreck too. Corroding metal is bad for the environment, and kids have already snuck on board and posted a video on the internet from inside the abandoned ship. The further fate of the Alta remains unresolved. It's still lying there. That ship sailed in the ocean for just 2 years. Now imagine if some other managed to drift for 38. In all that time, no one could catch this ship, and people still seek it. That vessel is called the SS Bechimo. It was a merchant ship owned by a Canadian trading company. In 1931, the ship got stuck in ice off the coast of Alaska. A strong snowstorm began. The team waited a week for it to end, but the storm only intensified. One day, the weather improved a bit, and part of the team was evacuated to the nearest city. Another part of the crew, with the captain, set up camp near the ship. The storm started again and didn't stop for a long time. The blizzard was so heavy that the ship's captain couldn't see beyond his arm's reach. Finally, when the storm was over, the captain saw that the ship simply vanished. He decided the Bechimo sank during the storm. A week later, the ship was found, drifting near the place where it was lost. The hull of the ship was damaged so badly that it was unsafe to sail on it. The captain decided to abandon the ship. However, it didn't sink. For the next 38 years, it was drifting at various points along the Alaskan coast. Several times, people climbed on the ship, including native Alaskan residents and a group of researchers. Attempts to save the vessel from the sea ended in failure. The salvage operations were hampered by drifting ice and bad weather. The last time it was seen was in 1969. The ship was frozen and blocked by the ice. In 2006, the government created a special project to find the Bechimo. However, in all these years, the ship still hasn't been found. Its fate is unknown. It's likely that the ship has finally found peace and is now lying on the seabed of the Chukchi Sea.
The airplane involved was a Beechcraft Bonanza single-engine aircraft. On board, pilot Bruce Gurnon had 2 passengers, his father and business partner. They took off from Andros Island in the Bahamas and headed northwest for the Florida coast. It was December 4, 1970. If you draw up a map, trace a line connecting the island of Bermuda, Puerto Rico, Miami, and back to Bermuda, what do you get? Yes, it's a triangle, a sinister polygon known for mysteriously swallowing over 2,000 ships and 200 aircraft over the centuries. Bruce Gurnon's plane was within its hungry grasp. But this was a typical flight Bruce had made dozens of times before. The trip usually took about an hour and a half, with no hiccups or mysterious phenomena whatsoever. The men were no more concerned than you would be during your daily commute to work. Oh, but this time would be different. They would face very unusual circumstances indeed. Bruce took off and started gaining altitude. Strange things started happening right from the get-go. At an altitude of about 1,000 feet, he noticed a small cloud up ahead. But it kept growing. Not from the plane getting closer, this thing was actually getting bigger in size. Bruce had to fly through it, and he came out the other end just fine. Another mysterious cloud appeared at 11,500 feet. This one was massive, and Bruce had no other choice but to fly through it too. So he concentrated, took a deep breath, and in they went. At that moment, it got dark as night all around the aircraft. Not a single sliver of sunshine got through. But this wasn't a storm cloud, and it wasn't raining. Bruce was starting to get worried, and then, bam! He saw flashes of white light. They would appear and vanish quickly like lightning. But this pilot knew this certainly was no lightning. The flashes were so bright, they lit up the whole space around them. Bruce kept flying for another 30 minutes when he realized this was the same cloud he had gone through earlier when he started to climb. But now the cloud was cylindrical, and the plane was flying through its center. It was about 1 mile wide and seemed endless. Bruce thought he could never get out of that trap. But a minute later, he saw light at the end of the tunnel. He kept that yoke straight ahead. He was almost out of this nightmare. But all of a sudden, unexplainable things started happening again. The walls of the cloud tunnel began to narrow. They were closing in on the plane. The navigational instruments started wigging out. The compass was spinning by itself counterclockwise. The electronic instruments were all malfunctioning. It was like the plane was being operated by something else, or it was moving inside some kind of current. All of Bruce's attempts to take control were to no avail. He kept flying through that tunnel, bound and determined to get out of this thing and live to tell the tale. The walls kept narrowing, smaller and smaller, wrapping like a vortex. Bruce was running out of time. He had to get out of this place fast. The next 20 seconds were the most intense of his life. But then, he burst out of this foggy trap. As Bruce described later, he felt weightless for 5 seconds as his plane left the tunnel. The clouds dispersed, and now the aircraft was in a grayish haze. The men let out a big sigh of relief. He immediately grabbed the radio and contacted ground control. Bruce wanted them to determine his location, but when the dispatcher looked at the green screen, his face became contorted with confusion. Bruce's plane wasn't on the radar. It was as if the thing was invisible. But then the dispatcher said the aircraft was already in Miami airspace. Bruce was utterly shocked by this information. It just couldn't be true. The distance the Beechcraft was supposed to cover was about 250 miles. Remember, the whole trip usually took around 90 minutes. But this time, it took just 47 minutes to get to the destination. This model of aircraft can only cruise at about 180 miles per hour. Do the math, and anyone would understand that this was physically impossible. The dispatcher must have made a mistake. But when the clouds parted, Bruce saw that he really was over Miami. The plane landed safely, and it was time to try and solve this mystery. So what happened on that flight? Bruce checked the remaining fuel and his watch. After a short calculation, he was only more confused. The plane hadn't gone through the amount of fuel it should have. Bruce couldn't have been wrong. He was a very experienced pilot. By his early 20s, he already had 600 hours of flight under his belt. And he was all too familiar with this airspace he'd flown countless times. All the evidence in hand seemed to indicate that Bruce's plane just skipped over almost half the entire distance. The man thought about this bizarre occurrence for a long time. He even consulted with professors and experts, but none of them could give an exact answer to what happened that day. So he came up with his own theory and even wrote a book about it. Bruce thought it all came down to this electric fog with white flashes. Others, however, theorized that dark energy was responsible for this time leap. Yes, that same dark energy responsible for the expansion of the universe. This energy could have curved time-space like a black hole, forming this strange tunnel. Bruce accidentally hit it, but he was lucky to get out of there. That's how he got into Miami airspace so fast. But dark energy is just a theory attempting to explain the unexplainable. To this day, there is no real answer for how Bruce was able to travel that distance in such a short time. But some details still can be explained. Archive records show that 84 sunspots were recorded that day, as well as a huge solar wind moving almost 440 miles per second. This would cause disturbances in the Earth's magnetosphere that could throw off the plane's instruments and radars. So Bruce's version that he was in an electronic fog could be right. And about these weird clouds. The thing is, they're pretty commonplace things in this area. Zones with low and high pressure are constantly colliding there. The result? Storm clouds. Perhaps that cloud growing before Bruce's eyes was simply two massive air currents crashing into each other. But so far, no one has been able to explain how the plane got to Miami so fast. Well, maybe in the future the truth will be revealed. In the meantime, it remains another mysterious riddle of the Bermuda Triangle. But it's still by far not the most shocking incident there. In 1945, a total of 5 planes went missing in the Bermuda Triangle all at once. On December 5th, some Navy student pilots were training in the area. The day's lesson? Navigation. Ironically enough, they couldn't find their way back to the base and got lost. Many people assume they ran out of fuel. This is likely to have caused the incident, but the circumstances were very strange. The students were under the supervision of an experienced lieutenant who had 2,500 flight hours. He would never let a bunch of newbies go so far that they'd get lost. The incident was called Flight 19. Even now, there's a debate about how it could have happened. 3 years later, a passenger jet headed to Miami from Puerto Rico disappeared in the same area. There were 29 passengers and 3 crew members on board. The weather was clear throughout the flight. But experts believe that when the plane was about 50 miles off the coast of Miami, It could have been hit by a strong wind that knocked it off course. Years later, divers found a similar-looking plane in the waters, but since it was lacking certain details and registrations, no one could confirm that it was the missing Miami-bound aircraft. The next month, in January 1948, another plane went missing in Bermuda. 25 passengers and 6 crew members just vanished somewhere between Azores and Bermuda. The mystery of this plane's disappearance, along with countless others, remains unsolved.
If you draw up a map, trace a line connecting the island of Bermuda, Puerto Rico, Miami, and back to Bermuda, what do you get? The infamous triangle, known for swallowing thousands of ships and aircraft over the centuries. But there's a new mystery to this already enigmatic place. Something's lurking deep in the waters below, and it's leaving bizarre clues of its existence. Splash! Your submarine hits the water surface. You descend 100, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet. It's getting darker. The sub's walls creak as the pressure grows. Over 1,400 psi. It's like the weight of a grand piano squeezing every square inch of your body from all sides. You've made it to your destination. All that's left is to spot the beast. Just in time. Among the black void, you see a bright green glow off in the distance. It's getting closer. As it approaches, it gets bigger. This is it! The creature that's been leaving strange circular markings on fish, dolphins, whales, and even other sharks. Behold, the cookie-cutter shark! Don't let its size fool you. It may be no longer than a bowling pin, but this creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to other marine animals using its neatly arranged, serrated teeth. With one bite, it fills its belly, detaches, and goes on about its day. Its mobile snack also swims away with its life. The only evidence of this rendezvous, a cookie-shaped mark on its body. Don't assume you're safe in your submarine. These bold little guys have been known to go after subs too. You decide not to risk the shark punching a hole in the only thing keeping you from being squished to a pulp by the surrounding water. You journey on to meet other bizarre creatures lurking in the Bermuda Triangle. At twice the depth, you'll find the dragonfish. Unlike other deep-water inhabitants, these things produce light in the infrared range. Blue and green is what other fish stick to. This gives the dragonfish a huge advantage. It provides itself with light that other marine dwellers just can't perceive. Things that want to eat the dragonfish can't detect this light, as well as the critters the dragonfish likes to feed on. A truly unique deep-sea dweller is the vampire squid. Neither vampire nor squid, or octopus, this thing is a unique species of its own. It has the largest eyes compared to body size of any animal on the entire planet. When the vampire squid feels threatened, it curls its arms up and around its body. Essentially, the thing turns itself inside out. Another animal to avoid down here is the terrifying bobbit worm. It buries itself in the seafloor, leaving a small part of its body out. It waits for dinner time with its pincer-like mouth parts open. What's on the menu? Other worms and fish that can be 7 times bigger than the bobbit. It uses its 5 antennas to sense when lunch is close enough to snap. In an instant, the worm launches forward and grabs its lunch with its mouth parts. It's not done yet. Once it's got its jaws locked onto its lunch, the worm injects it with venom and pulls it down into the burrow to feast. One of the deepest trenches in the Bermuda Triangle is the tongue of the ocean. This is also the secret breeding grounds of tiger sharks. You'll instantly recognize them thanks to those darker gray tiger stripes on their sides. They're the second largest predatory shark species after the great white. And with a big size comes a big appetite. Marine mammals, smaller sharks, stingrays, and green turtles are all on the menu. If you ever come face to face with a tiger shark, hopefully not, remember this: you can tell the fish's age by looking at its stripes. They fade over time, so the younger the shark, the more pronounced its stripes. There's plenty of zooplankton in the Bermuda Triangle. These are, usually, small organisms that are essential to the ocean's food chain. But get this, if nothing ate them and they were left to grow out of control, zooplankton would cover the entire world in layers and layers in just 4 months. Oh, and the largest type of zooplankton is the jellyfish. Jellyfish were around long before dinosaurs. You probably know your body is 60% water. A jellyfish is 95%. So if it gets washed onto the shore, after a few hours, most of its body just evaporates into the air. There's also a jellyfish that lives forever. The immortal jellyfish can revert itself back to its polyp stage and then grow again. Sounds like something from another planet, but it's no space jelly. Those do exist, by the way. Back in the 1990s, NASA raised jellyfish in space to see what zero gravity does to them. They were just fine living up there in the cosmos. When they came back down to Earth, though, they had trouble adjusting. The European eel hasn't been to space, but it is quite a globetrotter. It travels all the way from Europe to the Sargasso Sea, where the Bermuda Triangle is located. In the larval stage, it just drifts around the ocean for as long as 3 years sometimes. It's also the chameleon of the sea. Over the years, the European eel changes color, going from translucent to yellow to metallic silver. They're nocturnal and secretive, pretty much the ideal companion to have when you raid the fridge at midnight. A giant squid over half the length of a football field once washed up on a Florida beach. Researchers suspected this behemoth came from the Atlantic Ocean near the Bermuda Triangle. Giant squids are the longest invertebrates, meaning they have no backbone. They also have the biggest eyes on Earth, ever. They're as large as a soccer ball. Another creature found near the Bermuda Triangle is Sterer's cave shrimp. They were so good at keeping to themselves that no one knew these creatures even existed until 2011. Some female cave shrimps carry an impressive number of eggs along with them. Scientists discovered one female had around 2,000 eggs attached to her body. The Bermuda petrel is the national bird of, yes, you guessed it, Bermuda. It's the second rarest seabird on the planet. In fact, people thought it was extinct until 1951, when they spotted a few on the island. It has an eerie cry that'll send shivers down your spine. The Nassau grouper can only be found on the coasts of South Florida. This fish lies in wait and ambushes its lunch of other fish, crabs, and lobsters. It's sort of like a vacuum cleaner because it inhales its food through its huge mouth. The fish has a cool defense mechanism too. Like the chameleon, it changes color when it feels it's in danger. Sometimes it takes on a lighter or darker shade of its own color to blend in with the environment. So, you may spot a Nassau grouper, or you may not. If you happen to visit the Bermuda Triangle, you'll probably see a hammerhead shark. They use that iconic hammer-shaped head to pin their lunch, stingrays, onto the ocean floor. The shape of their head also gives them better vision. They can see almost 360 degrees all around, above and below them. Well, save for one blind spot right in front of their nose. The hawksbill sea turtle may not look intimidating, but this guy will eat anything it can get its bird-like beak around. Sea sponges, algae, and even venomous jellyfish. A lot of the stuff on their menu is inedible for most, but their body fat can absorb the venom and toxins, so they go unscathed. The Bermuda Triangle is also home to green glowworms. They're not really worms, but larvae. They produce that bright light from an organ near their tail. This light makes smaller creatures come toward them, making it easy for them to catch their lunch. Most of the time, they look pretty ordinary. but they have an oddly fixed schedule. Every third night after the full moon during the summer, at an exact time, the glowworm lights up. But back to more nightmarish creatures of the Bermuda Triangle. There's the goblin shark, known as a living fossil because it's the only one left of its animal family. It's only about the length of your forearm and looks like nothing special. But watch closely as its lunch gets too close. Boom! The shark's jaw shoots out of its mouth and grabs onto the unlucky creature. Once the teeth have locked in, the jaw goes right back in the shark's mouth. And yes, you share the planet with this thing. The legend of the Bermuda Triangle. It's one of the few mysteries we still can't solve. Let's rewind back about 600 years. The story begins with an Italian man. He wanted to sail across the ocean to reach Asia, a continent rich with spices, silk, minerals, that kind of stuff. Getting there by land would take ridiculously long, so he figured, hey, why not to build some sturdy ships, gather a couple of sailors, and set off to Asia? What could go wrong? That man was Christopher Columbus, by the way. In 1492, with a little help from Spain's royal family, he embarked on his journey. Everything was going well. Apart from totally going the wrong way. But as he got to the end of his voyage, he noticed something very strange. He didn't know it at the time, but he was sailing through the infamous Bermuda Triangle. The BT, the point of no return, the scary place between Bermuda, Puerto Rico, and Florida. There are loads of stories of ships, boats, and planes disappearing into this mysterious realm. Some were found years later, and some disappeared off the face of the earth, lying undiscovered at the bottom of the ocean. Maybe. We know one thing for sure. We have no clue what's going on over there. People have been trying to figure it out for years, but nothing. Zip, nada. So what was it that Christopher Columbus saw that fateful evening? What freaked him out so bad? According to his logs, Columbus saw a huge flash in the sky. I don't care how tough you are, if you're sailing around with no clue where you are, and then you see a massive flash right in front of you, you'd find me hiding below deck, chewing on a lemon or something. That's not the only sea mystery out there, not by a long shot. Heard of the Kraken? A giant squid that can swallow a whole ship. No? You're lucky. Imagine cruising on a ship, wind in your hair, hands on your hips, like, those old pirate movies. Then a huge squid creeps up on you from deep down in the cold, dark water. It wraps its tentacles around the ship and drags the whole thing to the bottom of the ocean. Good thing you packed a life raft. How about a colossal sea serpent chasing your boat at full speed looking for a midday snack? That thing is called a leviathan, and you better hope it's not real. Or sirens, mean but beautiful creatures of the sea. They like to hang out on rocks and sing karaoke. Their magical voices attract sailors who sail their ships right into the sharp rocks. Now, mermaids, on the other hand, totally awesome. They like karaoke too, but they're not into the whole ship smashing thing. Good old mermaids. They're real, right? And let's not forget peg-legged pirates. Arr, lootin', raidin', saying arr every 2 seconds. Arr. What else do those guys do all day? So back to our Italian friend, Columbus. Maybe he just saw a thunderstorm. Duh, why didn't he think of that? Well, I'm not 600 years old, and I wasn't there. How on earth would I know? Weird thing is, he never mentioned any huge waves or heavy rain. No strong winds either. Just a single flash in the sky. Maybe some dolphins were setting off fireworks or something. After the flash, Columbus wrote that his compass needle started dancing all over the place. This keeps getting weirder and weirder. His report ends with a friendly turtle with sunglasses jumping out of the water, pushing the 3 ships to shore, and everyone went out to get hot dogs. Only kidding. So, what happened? Scientists now think they've got the answer. Drum roll. An asteroid crashed into the ocean. Case closed. But wait, what about that stuff with the compass? What does that have to do with an asteroid? Asteroids come in all different shapes and sizes. but they're like chocolate eggs, the best part's on the inside. They're packed full of minerals and metals worth trillions of dollars. Scientists are even trying to figure out how to land on a big one and mine it. It'd have to be a really big one. I'm talking about an asteroid the size of Rhode Island. Why? Because chances are it'd have a magnetic field around it, making it way easier to land on. Scientists think that the magnetic fields around some asteroids can last for millions of years. Mystery solved. Maybe. Captain Christopher Columbus's compass went cuckoo crazy because of an asteroid crashing right in front of him. That actually might explain some other strange Bermuda tales. About 100 years ago, the USS Cyclops left Barbados on its way to Baltimore and sailed right through the middle of the Bermuda Triangle. It never arrived. Search teams spent ages looking, but they couldn't find anything. It just vanished, just like that. In 1945, 5 military planes vanished without a trace. They flew right over the Bermuda Triangle. So if there is an asteroid sitting at the bottom of the sea somewhere, why is it still causing problems 500 years later? Radar and old-school compasses rely on the Earth's magnetic field. Radar's how they track flights all around the world. A faulty radar reading? That would be a problem. Try putting a magnet near a compass and see what happens. The compass needle is its own little magnet, always pointing north. But if you put it next to a strong enough magnet, the needle will spin around to face it. What if that compass is all you've got to guide you to shore? Chinese ship captains were the first to invent compasses. Before that, people used to sail along the shore, or just to islands that they could see. Having compasses meant those early sailors could write down where they went, so other people could get there too. So now that we have all this new tech, the question is that asteroid even still down there? How would we get down there to find out? It wouldn't be the first ever deep sea dive. We've already been down the Mariana Trench, the deepest one on Earth. The Mariana Trench makes climbing Mount Everest look like a joke. Only 2 people have ever been down there. Because it's so deep, the water pressure is insane. The only way down is in a high-tech tank, something that won't crush in on itself under pressure. And that kind of thing doesn't come cheap. Down there, just a lot of darkness, quiet and beauty, and a bunch of weird animals. The Bermuda Triangle isn't as deep as the Mariana Trench, so we might get down there one day. We might see that asteroid that Columbus saw, this time with millions of tiny fish on it who've made it their home. All those lost ships and planes that disappeared should be down there somewhere. Or we might see something we were never expecting. We might find ancient species of squid, sharks, and turtles with special skills like night vision. We might find gold. Loads of ships full of gold and silver sank on their way back to Europe from the Americas. Some wrecks had evidence of fire. Some were split in two. Most of them are still out there. Japanese divers once found an ancient underwater pyramid-looking thing. They don't even know for sure if it was natural or man-made. Up in the Baltic Sea, someone snapped a bizarre sonar image of a spaceship? Or just a strange-looking rock? A Swiss lake was hiding a sweet vintage car. After it was dragged to shore and cleaned, it was sold for over $350,000, and the tires still had air in them. Japanese fishermen once found a small round boat that had a glass top on it. There was a red-haired woman inside. Some thought it was a fairy tale come true. Some thought she was a magical creature, and some thought she was a spy. The Bermuda Triangle sounds scary, but the islands near it are awesome. Bermuda is a tiny island where they speak English, and the other points of the triangle are the tip of Florida and the American island of Puerto Rico.
The voyage started just like any other. The cargo ship SS Cotopaxi is making another journey to Havana, Cuba, to deliver coal. It's November 29, 1925. For Captain Meyer and his crew, leaving Charleston Port, South Carolina, it will be the last trip the ship ever makes. Its route ran through the Bermuda Triangle. 2 days into the trip, the Cotopaxi sent out a distress signal. It had got caught up in a strong tropical storm and turned over on its side. The wind was very strong and there was powerful lightning as well. Rain gradually filled the ship's hold. Then there was a bright white flash, and the ship disappeared without a trace. Later, its wreckage was found in the Gobi Desert, which is in a completely different part of the world. All 32 crew members, including the captain, were missing. Of course, the part about the Gobi Desert is fictional. For one of his movies, Steven Spielberg came up with the idea that the ship was moved there by aliens. Still, in real life, the ship was never found, and its crew really did disappear. It was officially declared missing a month afterward, and nobody could find the wreck. It seems like a classic case of mysterious things going on in the Bermuda Triangle. But most mysteries are solved sooner or later. In 2020, the Cotopaxi was found. A man named Michael Barnett had moved to Florida to study shipwrecks off the coast. One wreck in particular really caught his attention. It was much larger than the others, and the locals called it the Bear Wreck. It was about 40 miles from St. Augustine in northern Florida, but no one had ever managed to identify the rusty hull. So Michael started to do some detective work. He measured the size of the shipwreck and started working through all the information he could find. He researched hundreds of old newspapers, leafed through insurance records, and looked at artifacts found on the wreck. After hundreds of hours of hard work, Michael was sure it was the Cotopaxi. But a few years before, there had been a rumor that the same ship had been found off the coast of Cuba. The Coast Guard found the wreck of a cargo ship about the same size that looked a lot like the one lost in 1925. Michael was sure they were wrong, so he teamed up with some science journalists and kept investigating. Soon they discovered something that seemed to confirm Michael's belief. Divers found brass valves with the letters SV on them in the wreckage of the ship. Michael suggested these initials referred to Scott Valve Manufacturing Company. The headquarters of this company was in Michigan, not far from where the Cotopaxi had been built. The company had probably supplied parts for the Cotopaxi. So the puzzle seemed to be solved. The Bear Wreck was really the missing cargo ship. But Michael still needed to work out why the ship had sunk. Did something mysterious really happen to the Cotopaxi in the Bermuda Triangle? Later, Michael found the testimony of the ship's carpenter among some old papers. The carpenter claimed that the hatches covering the coal on the ship had been in a terrible condition before it sank. Repair work on the covers wasn't finished before the crew got the order to sail to Cuba. So if the hatch covers were still broken during the trip, water could have easily gotten on board. This water probably flooded the hold during the tropical storm. This was the real reason why the Cotopaxi went down. There was really nothing mysterious about it. It was just a mistake made by ordinary people. But this is just one example out of dozens or even hundreds where ships and planes have gone missing in the Bermuda Triangle. We still can't explain some of these incidents. It seems like there really is something weird going on there. One of these strange events happened in 1948. A passenger jet was headed for Miami from San Juan, Puerto Rico. It disappeared in the same area as the Cotopaxi. The 32 people on board vanished without a trace. The weather was clear throughout the flight, but experts think that when the plane was about 50 miles from the coast, it could have been hit by a strong wind that knocked it off course. Years later, a similar plane was found in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, but because no one could work out the registration, it was impossible to say for sure if it was the same one. Something even stranger occurred not long before, in 1945. 5 planes went missing all at the same time. Some trainee pilots were practicing their navigation skills, but when they'd finished, it seems they couldn't find their way back home and disappeared. Many people assumed they just ran out of fuel. This seems likely, but still, the circumstances were really strange. The trainees were being supervised by an experienced pilot who had 2,500 hours of flight time. He would never have let a group of newbie pilots get that far away from their base. Even now, People still debate what could have happened. Some insist the pilots ran into something supernatural out there in the Bermuda Triangle. But who knows? And here's another freaky thing that happened there which no expert has been able to explain: time travel. In 1970, Bruce Gernon was flying a plane from Andros Island to the Florida coast. When he was at 11,500 feet, a giant cloud appeared in front of him. It kept getting bigger and bigger, and he had no choice but to fly through it. As soon as he did, the plane was surrounded by darkness. It was as if the day had turned to night in a split second. Suddenly, Bruce began to see white flashes of light around him. They were so bright that they lit up the entire sky. But they weren't lightning bolts, although he couldn't really explain what they were. The plane continued through the strange cloud for almost a half an hour. Bruce noticed that the cloud changed shape during this time. The space around the plane turned into a tunnel. Then the tunnel started narrowing. Bruce became really tense as he tried to cope with the plane's controls. All his instruments and navigation equipment were going crazy, and the electronics stopped working. Then, a white light appeared at the end of the tunnel. Just like in the movies, the plane escaped the closing cloud tunnel at the very last second. Everything was fine, but now Bruce found himself in some white fog. He had no idea where he was. Then he managed to contact ground control. He was shocked when he learned that his plane was already in the airspace above Miami. It seemed that something impossible had happened. Bruce was meant to cover a distance of about 250 miles during the flight. This usually took 1.5 hours, but he had managed it in just 47 minutes, almost 2 times faster than normal. When Bruce landed, he went to check the amount of fuel left in the tank. It turned out he'd used up a lot less than the normal amount of fuel as well. Could there be a logical explanation for the time-traveling plane? Well, records show that a large number of sunspots were detected on the surface of the sun that day, and there was a strong solar wind. This could easily have made the electronics and devices on the plane go crazy. But what about the mysterious cloud? The Florida coast is a place where 2 large air currents meet. One has a high pressure and the other is a low pressure one. This causes a lot of storm clouds in the area. But people still debate how Bruce was able to cover the distance so quickly. Some people say that some kind of mysterious dark energy was involved. Others say it was a gravitational anomaly that curves space and time. Others think that Bruce is just a fraud. We still don't know the truth. So, is there really something supernatural about the Bermuda Triangle? Or is it all just coincidences and made-up stories? The truth is that no more planes and ships disappear in the Bermuda Triangle than anywhere else in the world.
The notorious Bermuda Triangle in the North Atlantic Ocean makes people, ships, and airplanes vanish into thin air. Some experts blame bad weather conditions. Others are sure the reason is heavy traffic in the area and human error. Many people believe in conspiracy theories, aliens, the lost city of Atlantis, or even a massive meteorite lying on the ocean floor. There are also those who deny there's anything unusual about the triangle, and still, the mystery remains. But few people know that the South Atlantic Ocean has an enigma of its own. Well, not the ocean itself, but a patch of space above this area. It's dubbed the Bermuda Triangle of space, or the South Atlantic Anomaly. There, Earth's protection against solar radiation is much weaker than anywhere else. When spacecraft get into this region, all kinds of serious problems occur to them. For example, their equipment can fail or break down out of the blue. When NASA was launching its $2.5 billion Perseverance rover in July 2020, the space agency planners had to do their best to avoid the Space Bermuda Triangle. Otherwise, it could have easily wreaked havoc on the spacecraft headed for Mars. This bizarre region stretches from Zimbabwe to Chile. The anomaly itself seems to be connected with one of the 2 Van Allen radiation belts. These belts are zones of intense radiation that comes from the solar wind. charged particles get caught by our planet's magnetic field. They form two rings that surround Earth, stretching from 400 to 36,000 miles above the surface. The inner Van Allen belt is made up of mostly protons, while the outer is mainly electrons. By trapping the particles, the two belts protect you and our planet from getting harmed by solar radiation. The South Atlantic anomaly lies in the region where the inner Van Allen belt comes very close to the planet's surface. In this place, Earth's magnetic field is especially weak. Nothing prevents cosmic rays from reaching as far as a mere 120 miles above the surface. The more solar radiation, the more high-energy particles gather over the South Atlantic Ocean. The problem is that this radiation hotspot sits so low that many satellites have to travel through it while following their orbits. There, they get bombarded by protons at a speed of 18,000 hits per square inch per second. No wonder it affects all the electronic systems on board the spacecraft. For example, the Hubble telescope passes through the space Bermuda Triangle more than 10 times a day, and it can't collect information when it's in that region. If the equipment isn't put into safe mode, all spacecraft systems can fail. Plus, the more complicated electronics become, the more problems occur in the area of the South Atlantic anomaly, and the more costly the damage is. The SpaceX CRS-1 Dragon spacecraft almost went out of control in October 2012. Attached to the International Space Station, it had serious problems while passing through the magnetic anomaly. Luckily, those issues were short-lived. In March 2016, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency lost contact with its satellite Hitomi. It was launched about a month before to study processes happening in the universe. Later, it was found out that the spacecraft had broken into pieces and crashed down to Earth. One of the motion sensors reported that the satellite was rotating, but in reality, it was stable. When the control system tried to prevent the unwanted and non-existent spin, the spacecraft fell to pieces. This accident cost almost $280 million and 3 years of preparation. But returning to the Earth's magnetic field, why is it weaker above the South Atlantic Ocean? Rather than being a perfect sphere, our planet bulges in the middle. If you measured Earth's diameter at the equator, it would be 27 miles wider than the pole-to-pole one. In the areas where there's a dip, charged particles from space can get closer to our planet's surface. The magnetic field is created when liquid metals flow in our planet's outer core. This generates electric currents and also gives Earth its south and north poles. But these poles aren't constant because our planet's magnetic field is constantly shifting. Sometimes it's getting weaker, and at other times, it's growing stronger. Right now, the Earth's magnetic field is weakening. This process started more than 1,000 years ago. Scientists don't deny that one day, Earth's magnetic poles might flip. Then, the North Pole will become the South, and vice versa. Such a phenomenon has been happening all the way throughout the history of our planet. The last time, it occurred around 780,000 years ago. Experts are still unsure if such a flip is going to happen this time. After all, it's not an instant change. This long process can even reverse all of a sudden. Something like that happened 40,000 years ago. At that time, Earth was really close to renaming its north magnetic pole to the south. But that brisk event turned out to be not a full reversal. While scientists were trying to figure out how long the South Atlantic anomaly had been around, they made a curious geological discovery. It showed what our planet's magnetic field looked like several thousand years ago. The Bantu people were a tribe of ancient Africans who lived about 1,000 years ago in the region of the Limpopo River Valley. Nowadays, this area is inside the South Atlantic anomaly. Bantu people had an odd ritual. During droughts, they burned their own clay huts. They hoped such a sacrifice would make it rain. But when clay burned at high temperatures, the magnetic minerals in it aligned with Earth's magnetic field. That's why when the substance cooled down, the minerals showed the planet's magnetic field pattern. It helped the scientists learn that the process of the weakening of the magnetosphere started long ago. The clay patterns even specified certain periods of time when the process was especially active: 400 to 450 CE, 700 to 750 CE, and 1225 to 1550 CE. Even better, the researchers likely found the answer to the mystery of the space Bermuda Triangle. They noticed there was something unusual about the boundary lying between our planet's silicate mantle and its liquid iron-nickel outer core. This region is almost 1,800 miles beneath Earth's surface, and that's where a huge reservoir of super dense rock sits. Some experts state that the thing might be tens of millions of years old and thousands of miles wide. It's not 100% clear how a rock, even if it's that big, can interfere with the magnetic field of the entire planet. It might be because it's located right between Earth's boiling outer core and the mantle, which is much stiffer and cooler. The enormous boulder might be disturbing the layer of iron, and it's the very thing that helps to form our planet's magnetic field. Whatever the reason is, exactly under Africa, the magnetic field is reversed, and that's what's likely to cause the anomaly that affects spacecraft. At first, the scientists thought their discovery meant the magnetic field was about to flip again. If it was true, our planet would go through several catastrophic events. The continents would start to lurch in different directions. It would trigger catastrophic earthquakes, lead to the disappearance of many species, and provoke climate changes. Luckily, there's no evidence that the consequences of the pole reversal would be that bad. Even better, it might not happen at all. After more research, it became clear that the Bermuda Triangle of space isn't a sign of an upcoming pole reversal. The events taking place under the continent are more likely to be part of a bigger scale pattern. But the South Atlantic anomaly is scary enough on its own. If this area keeps growing, it'll cause problems not only in space, but also on Earth. Computers and other electronic equipment will fail or stop working altogether. Right now, the radiation is less intense in the lower layers of the anomaly than in its upper part. But over the past 150 years, the magnetic field in the region has lost more than 15% of its strength. It doesn't mean Earth will be left unprotected from the sun's radiation in the nearest future. Experts are sure this won't happen for at least another billion years. Plus, some kind of magnetic field always existed during the times of the magnetic poles reversal, even though it was weaker and more complicated than the modern one. April 10th, 1912. You're on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in a small port town. Hundreds of people, and you among them, are going to board the huge, majestic ship. It's 3 times as long as the Statue of Liberty is tall. The ship is considered the most advanced and unsinkable watercraft of its time. You can see hundreds of luxury cabin windows on its deck, and the Titanic inscription on the magnificent iron hull. This day, the famous superliner set off on its first and last voyage from Southampton to New York. But now, you'll see an alternate story. You can hear a crew member announcing the start of the Titanic's trip. The ship sails from Africa to Bermuda, and the cause of its catastrophe will not be an iceberg at all. For 4 days, Titanic sails through North Atlantic waters. The sun warms the ship so much that during the day, all the passengers sit inside the ship. In the evening, when a cool breeze descends on the ocean, all the people go up on deck to watch the beautiful red sunset. Midnight, April 15th. You're sitting in your cabin reading a book. You're usually asleep at this time, but right now, you're just flipping through page after page. You close the book and look around the cabin. You feel like someone's watching you. You get up and break out into a cold sweat. An inexplicable feeling of anxiety permeates your body and causes goosebumps. You look out the cabin window where the ocean spray is banging the glass, but you can't see anything. There's a thick fog outside. You leave the cabin. In addition to you, several passengers also left their beds because of a heightened sense of danger. They greet you and ask what's wrong, but no one knows. You head to the stairs to go out on the deck to see the situation. At this point, the floor goes out from under your feet. A strong push makes you fall. A rumble reverberates through the Titanic. You get up and see more and more people going out from their cabins. You run up the stairs and meet a crew member. He doesn't tell you anything, but his eyes are wide with fear. You go up on deck and can hardly see anything. A thick, wet fog has settled over the ship. Several passengers are holding their heads as if they have a headache. You see the captain and ask him what happened. The captain admits that he has no idea where you are. You see a compass in his hand. The arrow turns in different directions. It's impossible to determine where exactly the ship is now. Interestingly, there was no such thing as the Bermuda Triangle before 1964, but the first reports of missing ships in this area date back to the middle of the 19th century. Another push. This time you've managed to stay on your feet. It felt like something big just hit the ship. You run to the railing at the edge of the deck and stare overboard. Through the white fog, you notice a huge shark fin. You haven't seen the full size of the shark, but from what you've seen, it must be as long as a train car. The shark swims away, but after a few seconds, you can see its fin again. It quickly approaches the ship and grabs the iron hull with its huge jaws. The deck is shaking. You can hear the grinding of metal. It seems this huge predator just made a hole in the hull. Only one creature on the planet can do this, the Megalodon. It's an ancient marine predator that measured almost 60 feet in length. Megalodon had no competition in the ocean. It was at the top of the food chain. It's believed the shark disappeared millions of years ago, but the ocean is only 5% explored. Here, it's alive and swimming in the mysterious waters of the Bermuda Triangle. Everyone aboard the ship is panicking. People from the lower decks are running upstairs. The Titanic slowly sinks and tilts to the side. Everyone goes to the lifeboats, but no one dares to get in them while the huge ancient monster is around. The ship's bow submerges under the water. You stand on the left side of the deck and see the Megalodon bite off pieces of the iron hull. You shout to the people in the stern section that the Megalodon is busy and they have time to evacuate. The first rescue boats with passengers go down on the water. Some passengers just jump overboard. Fortunately, the water is much warmer than the place where the Titanic actually sank. You put on a life jacket and jump too. The Megalodon attacks the ship and drags it deeper into the water. The smell of the Titanic's kitchen must have attracted it. You find yourself among the ship's flotsam and lifeboats. The fog's finally rising. The starry sky and the moon illuminate the sea's surface. People help you to climb on board a rescue boat. Everyone tries to sail as far away from the sinking ship as possible. You see the huge shark swimming around the Titanic. At this moment, something distracts it, and the predator goes away. More than half of the ship is already under the surface. The second part looks like a candle sticking out of the water. The ocean is calm, the sky's clear and cloudless, there's no wind. From the side, you see a huge wave growing behind the Titanic. It's about 50 feet high, like a 5-story building. It knocks the ship down as easily as if it was made of paper. The monster wave dissolves in the water as quickly and unexpectedly as it appeared. You've just witnessed a rogue wave. This phenomenon occurs all over the world. Enormous waves suddenly appear, demolish ships, and disappear without a trace. Scientists still can't determine their exact nature, but according to the most popular theory, these waves are formed by kinetic vampirism. Under certain natural conditions, waves accumulate and exchange kinetic energy. Among all the waves out there, there is one vampire wave that absorbs the energy of all the others. When a lot of energy is accumulated, a huge wave grows and splashes it all out. Some believe the frequent disappearance of ships in the Bermuda Triangle occurred because of rogue waves. The people on the boats calm down. Someone sends a flare into the sky. You look at the ocean and see the triangular fin of the Megalodon emerging from the water. It's the size of a sailboat, and it's coming your way. You row the oars as fast as you can. People are screaming and calling for help. There's no chance of escape. The legendary monster is getting closer and closer. The shark's head peeks out from under the surface. It opens its huge maw filled with hundreds of sharp teeth. Each of them is the size of your palm. The boat would fit entirely inside the shark's mouth. It can swallow you whole. The shark stops and closes its mouth at arm's length from the boat. You can see the water bubbling around you. From the ocean depths, several giant tentacles lash out and wrap around the megalodon. They pull the shark down. You look over the side and see a purple glow with a black circle in the center. Someone on the boat notices it too. People start screaming, "It's looking at us!" a woman shouts. After a second, you get goosebumps and a shiver runs through your entire body. This purple glow is something's eye, and the black circle is the pupil. The creature that is looking at you right now is so big that the boat seems like a grain of rice to it. It's the Kraken! The giant squid, an ancient monster that sank hundreds of ships, but whose existence has not been proven by anyone yet. Fortunately, the boat you're sitting in is too small to interest the Kraken. You can see its eye moving deeper away. Huge tentacles pull the struggling megalodon into the depths. An hour passes, and another big superliner arrives at the wreck of the Titanic. All the passengers are rescued. You look back at the calm sea, at the place where the Titanic recently sailed. You climb aboard the rescue ship and promise yourself never to go on a sea voyage again. Some people are still afraid of sailing through this region because more than 50 ships and 20 planes have disappeared here since the mid-19th century. You won't find this place on a regular paper map, as it's not an official region of the Atlantic Ocean. It's just an imaginary area of water in the shape of a triangle near the southeastern coast of the US. Right now, we're going there to debunk all the myths and fairy tales about this place. The most popular theory says that the ancient city of Atlantis was once located where the Bermuda Triangle is now. It was inhabited by a more advanced civilization than the rest of the people on Earth. In this area, some mysterious crystals were installed that generated infinite energy and powered the entire city. Then the city sank, and its ruins still lie on the bottom of the Atlantic. But among its ruins, there are still places where crystals work. They're the reason for most disappearances. Crystals randomly release beams of energy towards the surface and disable the electronics of planes and ships. There are no facts to support this theory. Someone once wrote this legend in a book about the Bermuda Triangle, and some people have been supporting it ever since. However, there's some oddity associated with electronics. Astronauts of the International Space Station noticed the Earth's magnetic field is weakened in the Bermuda Triangle area. This field is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Above the triangle, the particles of the sun's rays move faster than in any other part of the planet. This causes unstable work in the electronics of satellites flying in the atmosphere of Earth. It doesn't apply to ships and planes, though. There's also a theory that the Bermuda Triangle is the center of a magnetic anomaly causing navigation errors, but regular checks of the magnetic map of this region don't reveal any issues. You arrive at the place, the water is calm, and there's no coming storm in sight. You look at the compass and see the arrow moving from side to side. Oh no, it's begun! Panic rises within you, and you quickly turn the steering wheel of the ship to sail away from this place. Oh, stop. There has long been an explanation for the strange compass behavior in this area. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the rare places on the planet where true north and the magnetic one are in the exact same direction. True north is the geographic north pole of our planet. Magnetic north directs to the north magnetic pole, which constantly wanders around the Earth. Sometimes these poles coincide, and the straight line that connects north and south is called the agonic line. If you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. It won't point exactly to the north. Imagine that you're the captain of a ship sailing in the Bermuda Triangle at the beginning of the 20th century. You need to know where north is to get to the shore. You look at the compass and it points incorrectly. You're deviating from your original course and sailing in the wrong direction. There's the Caribbean Sea near the triangle, peppered with small islands. The sea floor here isn't deep. The ship can get in shallow waters, and now the ship is stuck on a shoal. and you have no idea where you are. If this were the 21st century, the ship's captain would be able to reach the shore using GPS and other modern navigation. But the most interesting thing is that the compass would work correctly this time, since the magnetic North Pole hasn't already coincided with the true one for a long time in the territory of the Bermuda Triangle. The agonic line is somewhere far away from here. There are no problems with navigation now, but for some reason, this is where ships disappear. In fact, not just here. Throughout the Atlantic Ocean, there are places where many more ships have gone. The Bermuda Triangle is not even in the top 10 of such places. One of the main reasons why many ships are lost here is that one of the most popular shipping routes in the Atlantic passes through the Bermuda Triangle. And the more ships in one place, the more shipwrecks. Simple probability. Other theories say there's a space-time rift in this region. Ships and planes fall into this rift and end up in the past or the future. But for some reason, there's not a single proof of this myth. There's no reason to think that the rift is hidden somewhere here. The base of an extraterrestrial civilization is located in the Bermuda Triangle. Visitors from other galaxies steal sea vessels along with the crew, so no one finds the wreckage of the ships. This is also a popular myth that has no scientific justification. Sunken ships are not found here, as there's one of the deepest trenches in the world. Any sinking ship will sink to a depth of about 19,000 feet. The enormous pressure and distance makes it difficult to find the ships. Also, the Puerto Rico Trench is nearby. In some spots, it's as deep as 27,500 feet. The Kraken lives somewhere in the triangle. It's a huge squid that sinks ships and is also a legend that sailors tell each other. However, gigantic squids live in the depths of the ocean. They can grow to the size of half a train car, but no cases have been recorded where they have sunk a large vessel. And in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, they've never even been seen. People in the past didn't know about the existence of these creatures, so when they saw them for the first time, they described them as huge, terrible monsters. Giant squids are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth, and scientists had to use sonar equipment to find them. They don't like to leave the dark depths and are likely to be afraid of the sound of any ship. A more realistic hypothesis about the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle is methane. Large deposits of this gas can be found under the seafloor of this region. From there, methane is released into the water. It takes the form of huge bubbles that quickly rise to the surface. Then, the gas makes the water almost boil, creating waves that sink ships. The theory is quite realistic, but numerous studies still haven't confirmed the presence of an increased concentration of methane in the region. Last time this phenomenon occurred was 15,000 years ago. Another credible theory implies the appearance of rogue waves. Imagine a clear, calm sea without wind. Suddenly, you hear a loud hum. In just a few seconds, a huge wave, 100 feet tall, appears from the calm surface and falls on your ship. Some scientists believe rogue waves are created by a surface sea current colliding with a strong headwind. There's a version claiming the wave is born because of the collision of warm and cold currents. But the most interesting theory says the waves are formed by kinetic vampirism. Under certain natural conditions, waves can exchange kinetic energy. And among all the waves, there will be one, the vampire, that gets the energy of all the others. When it accumulates enough energy, the vampire wave spills it out. This explains the force of the impact and its sudden disappearance. This phenomenon is observed in all the waters of the world's oceans, but there's no evidence that it occurs most often in the Bermuda Triangle. If rogue waves appeared there, it was not during a calm. A restless sea is the main reason for ship disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. Severe storms and hurricanes are a frequent thing there, because the Bermuda Islands is an area of high pressure that diverts thunderstorms towards the triangle. Huge waves simply overturn ships, and thunder and lightning flashes disable planes' electronics. There's nothing mysterious about this. Storms and ship disappearances occur in all oceans, but a lot of legends were made exactly about the Bermuda Triangle. It all started in the middle of the 20th century, when a book was published that tells us that Atlantis lies in the waters of the triangle. No proof was given, But people liked this mysterious theory so much, they began to build upon it. They started making documentaries about it and writing new books. Each material devoted to the fantastic nature of the triangle was based not on facts, but the theories of other written books and films. And when a topic is popular, you can make money on it. Readers enjoy it, and authors are rewarded.
A bright flash on your left. Boom! Where did that lightning come from? Your plane shakes, your instruments stop working. A minute ago, the sky was clear and blue. Now, it's pitch black. Your senses go haywire. You don't understand which way is up or down. It's a strange feeling. You're beyond time and space. Lightning flashes from all directions. Clouds envelop your plane and swirl it into a vortex. You grip the controls and repeat to yourself, "I'll get out of this. I'll get out." Through the dark and thick clouds, you see a ray of light. It's your only chance. Your plane flies toward the light like a moth to a flame, and whoosh! You break out of the terrible whirlwind. Your instruments are back to normal. The plane's no longer shaking. You're saved. That's how pilots who faced the Bermuda Triangle anomaly describe their experiences. Well, at least on TV shows. The huge chunk of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico remain the planet's most mysterious area. But it's not alone. Alaska has its own triangle. Since the late 80s, 16,000 people have disappeared there. Eyewitnesses to the Bermuda Triangle anomaly talk about thick fog, lightning, balls of light, and hallucinations. In Alaska, everything's a bit more complicated. People, planes, ships, they just disappear without a trace. There's no one around to tell us what it felt like. In 1950, a plane took off from Anchorage, Alaska, headed for Great Falls in Montana. It was carrying 8 crew members and 36 passengers. 2 hours after the start of the flight, the captain radioed in that everything was fine. Then, silence. The 100-foot-long plane seemed to evaporate into thin air. 85 aircraft and around 7,000 people searched for the plane. No trace. Not even a screw, bolt, nothing. That plane mystery made the Alaskan Triangle famous. If you look on a map, it's a wild and mostly unpopulated zone that passes near Anchorage, Barrow, and Juneau. If you connect the dots on a map, you get an epic triangle. You can fit the whole state of Oregon in it twice. If you read around, you'll find a bunch of major areas on the planet where weird stuff keeps happening over land, sea, desert, and jungle. Scientists have many questions about these places. They all have extreme electrical and magnetic anomalies. Planes and ships disappear in them. People hear stuff, see stuff, and here's some of them. China's Black Bamboo Valley looks like a Hollywood set for a seriously scary movie. Here, everything's creepy and mysterious. Ha, perfect. Imagine a bamboo forest that stretches up 130 feet. The green plants live extremely close to each other and barely let in any sunlight. A strange fog hangs in the air. Where it comes from and why it's always there, no one knows. And the mysteries don't end there. For centuries, people have disappeared in the vast forest. Scientists believe the site's crazy geology is to blame. Cracks can suddenly appear in the ground big enough to fall into. There are sharp changes in weather, and maybe even poisonous steam. Certain trees give it off when they fall to the ground. There's a long road through Ladakh in India. It's called the Magnetic Road. It slopes upwards and seems to violate the laws of gravity. Here's what happens. You drive to the foot of the hill, turn off the engine, and get out of the car. The car starts rolling uphill, up to 12 miles per hour. Why does it happen? Theory 1. The hill has an incredibly strong magnetic pull, and it attracts cars once they get too close. The Indian Air Force supposedly avoids flying over it to avoid any interference with their equipment. Version 2. It's all just an optical illusion. The hills around it seem to fade into the horizon. It looks to us like the road is sloped up, but it's actually not. Huge Lake Michigan looks more like a sea than a lake. And over the past 400 years, 6,000 ships have disappeared in it. Why does it happen? The lake has its own mysterious triangle, and there are actually more unsolved mysteries here than in the famous Bermuda Triangle. In 1950, Flight 2501 disappeared over the lake. en route from New York to Minneapolis. The fate of the 3 crew members and 55 passengers remains unknown. In 2007, an underwater archaeology professor was surveying the bottom of Lake Michigan. He found stones arranged in a circle 40 feet down from the surface. They kind of looked like Stonehenge in England, but why were they at the bottom of a lake? Who put them there? Archaeologists found a carved pattern on one of the stones. Its outline resembles a drawing of an animal. Now, that's not unusual, except that this particular animal, which looks like a mammoth, was probably carved around 10,000 years ago. Sleep is very difficult for the Venezuelan locals who live near Lake Maracaibo. Right at the place where the Catatumbo River flows into the lake, there are huge electrical storms that can go up to 10 hours long. 260 days a year. That's over 1 million lightning bolts over the lake every year. Scientists don't know exactly what causes the daily lightning parties. Some people think it's due to the gas methane which comes out of the ground. Other scientists blame uranium deposits in the soil. Nowadays, though, most researchers are sure that the lightning's caused by weather. Cold mountain air smashes against warm sea air. The result? A lot of friction and moisture, the perfect combo for near-nightly natural fireworks. It's super loud and kind of annoying if you live nearby, but the area is really important for the planet. It helps regenerate our vital atmospheric ozone. And the one that started it all, the Bermuda Triangle. Planes, ships, all gone without a trace. The theories are endless. Scientists even think there might be a huge meteor at the bottom of the sea that emits its own magnetic energy. It might have confused the navigation equipment on all those unlucky carriers. And it's been going on for a while. Researchers think that it was causing trouble even way back in Columbus's time. As far as Alaska's concerned, magnetic anomalies are a dime a dozen. Around here, your compass might be off by 5, 30, or even 60 degrees. But equipment malfunction isn't really enough to explain the disappearance of so many aircraft and people in this absolutely massive state. Alaska is wild. High mountains, never-ending forests, snow in the winter, and some serious heat in the summer. There are 3 million lakes, 12,000 rivers, and around 100,000 glaciers. There's only 1 person per square mile. California has over 250. You could walk for days, weeks, even months without seeing anyone, except maybe a bear or 2. And the days and nights can be really confusing this far north. Tourists from all over the world dream of coming to Alaska to see the planet as it was before. No concrete jungle, no endless roads, warehouses, and cornfields. But this isn't just a beautiful place. It's also an incredibly dangerous place. You can get lost in the forest, run out of food, get soaked to the bone, lose your compass or GPS. In the harsh conditions of Alaska, danger's always just around the corner. Most vacationers just aren't prepared for that. 80% of the state's communities aren't connected to the road system. Back in the Wild West, horses carried people, products, and information. In Alaska, it's all about planes. Alaska has 9,000 aircraft and 8,000 pilots, and counting. That's more than 1 out of every 100 Alaskans. Sudden weather changes, frequent and wild rain, snowstorms, and fog. Not a great recipe for a smooth flight. The wings on Alaskan plains can get covered with ice. The fog can hide the snowy mountaintops, and strong gusts of wind can knock a tiny plane way off course. That's what those pilots have to deal with every time they take off. So, that plane that disappeared? Investigators believe that the Douglas C-54 Skymaster disappeared due to bad weather, and any debris was covered with snow or fell into a lake. 5% of Alaska is covered in glaciers, and there are loads of cracks in them, some big enough to fit a person, a few people, or even a whole airplane.
More than 50 ships and 20 planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle since the middle of the 19th century. This region isn't put on any paper map and is not an official region of the Atlantic. This massive water area is located not far from the southeastern coast of the US and still scares many sailors. But you aren't afraid and want to prove that there is nothing special in this place. You sail to the center of the Bermuda Triangle on a small fishing boat. You turn off the engine and wait. Several hours pass. The sun goes below the horizon. Night comes. You're about to return to the shore, but suddenly, it becomes too quiet. Then, you hear a splash of water. You look overboard and see hundreds of fish swimming to the surface. Something big scared them away. Something that comes straight from the depths. The next second, you notice big sparkling eyes and long tentacles reaching for the boat. It seems that one of the most terrible myths about the Bermuda Triangle turned out to be true. A huge squid dragging ships to the bottom. Stories about these squids appeared long before the emergence of the Bermuda Triangle myths. For centuries, sailors from Norway and Greenland told stories about a scary sea monster, the Kraken. In those stories, the Kraken broke the decks of ships with its giant tentacles and dragged them to the bottom. The approach of this creature is impossible to see since it's coming to you not from the side, but from below. But all these were just stories. Only in the 19th century, scientific evidence of the existing of these monsters appeared. A beak of an unknown squid was found on the coast of Denmark. The size of the find was about 3 inches in diameter, which is about the size of a human palm. Then, it became clear that the Kraken was real, and it's just one variety of giant squid. Since then, more than 21 species of giant squid have been described, but the first video with this monster was recorded in 2004 in the waters of North Atlantic, not far from the Bermuda Triangle. Marine biologists used a lure to draw the squid out of the depths. The huge monster was about 30 feet long, which is about half a subway car. It suddenly appeared out of the ocean darkness and quickly attacked the lure, squeezing it with its tentacles. After that, many cases of squid have been recorded on photos and video. Huge squids were washed up on the shore, swam past ships. According to some records, the largest monster ever found was 59 feet long and weighed almost a ton. This is the size of a big bus. Some scientists believe that giant squids can reach 150 feet in length, which is almost twice the size of a basketball court. But the big size is not enough to sink a ship. The first thing that helps squids do this is the surprise effect. Squids come from the depths, which mean they can be seen from the deck, but the monster can see a boat from afar. It has the biggest eyes in the world. One eye is about the size of a basketball. The eyesight of a giant squid allows them to see prey in the Black Sea depths and from a big distance. Most sea creatures on the planet can't see in such conditions. So, the squid notices your ship and decides that it's food. It quickly approaches the boat and attacks with its tentacles. The squid has 8 limbs and 2 extra longer tentacles the monster uses to bring food to the beak-shaped mouth. The others are covered with dozens of suction cups filled with sharp teeth. Nothing can escape if the squid grabs it. The squid wraps its tentacles around your boat. With the teeth on each arm, it bites the deck. 2 long tentacles can grab you while you're running around in panic. The squid can rock the ship from side to side until one of its parts sinks in the water. You fight off 2 long tentacles and fall off your feet. The squid's 8 arms are squeezing stronger. You can hear the boat's hull cracking. The squid is big, but still can't sink a large metal object. Possibly, it couldn't have sunk huge ships that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. You see how the squid swims away into the depths. You're lucky this time, but you definitely wouldn't handle 2 such monsters. The existence of giant squids was proven more than 150 years ago, but people still don't know anything about them. The fact is that they are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They swim fast, spending most of their time at depths of 1,300 to 3,000 feet. To descend there, people need sturdy submarines and bulky equipment that create a lot of noise. The squid will notice them much earlier and swim away. Scientists don't know anything about their behavior, social life, habits, or a distance they swim during the day. And most importantly, we don't know how many of them are hidden in the water. The ocean is only 5% explored. It's possible that millions of giant squids swim in the sea depths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's bodies with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holes and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. You start the engine to swim to the shore and notice that about 30 tentacles are reaching out to you from the water. 3 giant squids squeeze the boat from all sides and pull it down. It looks like there's no way out. You look overboard and see black eyes looking right at you. At this moment, you find a solution. Squids spend their whole life in darkness and are afraid of the light. Fortunately, you have a signal rocket. You use it to scare the monsters away. Squids go back down into the water, but apparently not for long. You release a few more rockets into the ocean and scream in fear. The red light illuminates the sea darkness, and you see hundreds of moving tentacles. They quickly swim away from the fire to a safe distance. At full throttle, you're sailing to the shore and releasing all the signal fires into the water. You don't give the squids a chance to get close to you. Finally, you get to land, confident that you will never return to this place. The bad news is, these creatures swim not only in the Bermuda Triangle. People found giant squid in the oceans all over the world. Yeah, it's possible the giant squid is the main reason for the disappearance of ships, but this doesn't make the Bermuda Triangle a unique place. Boats and cargo ships disappear all over the Atlantic Ocean. The Triangle is not even included in the top 10 of such places. Also, this area is one of the most popular shipping routes of the Atlantic. And the more ships sail in one place, the more ships are lost. Many scientists believe the reason of the disappearances here is strong storms and hurricanes. Bermuda is located in an area of high pressure, which diverts thunderstorms towards the Triangle. The waves reach such sizes here that they can turn ships over. Thunder and frequent flashes of lightning disable planes. The Earth's magnetic field is weakened at the location of the Triangle. This field works as a shield, which repels solar particles. Here, solar radiation passes through the upper layers of the atmosphere and can negatively affect the electronics operation. Also, there is a theory that says that the Bermuda Triangle is the center of a magnetic anomaly. But scientists made many checks of the magnetic map of this region and haven't found any oddities.
If you think you're safe from violent tornadoes because you aren't living in the tornado alley, you could be dangerously wrong. It's shifting to the east. It looks like we're about to see fewer single tornado days and more days with multiple powerful tornadoes. And because they're shifting into more populated areas, they could take more lives and ruin more homes. There isn't enough time to build infrastructure to protect everyone from this fast-moving danger. So the least you can do to save yourself is learn as much as you can about it. About 1,200 tornadoes hit the US every year. You gotta thank the unique geography that sets up the perfect conditions for it, especially in spring and summer. Winds from the Pacific drop moisture over the Rockies and become dry and cool as they move east. They collide with warm, humid air streams from the Gulf of Mexico over the flat terrain. And that's how unstable air and wind shear, which are the perfect conditions for tornadoes, are born. Historically, tornadoes were most common in Tornado Alley. This term was first used in the 1950s by 2 meteorologists as the title for their research project to study extreme weather in Texas and Oklahoma. Northeastern Texas and south-central Oklahoma are precisely the areas we think of when we talk about Tornado Alley. But in the past 10 years or so, it has shifted eastward by up to 500 miles. Now, eastern Missouri, Arkansas, western Tennessee, Kentucky, northern Mississippi, and Alabama see more tornadoes. The storms of early 2023 are great proof that this trend is real. A violent tornado hit Rolling Fork, Mississippi, and another outbreak caused huge damage in the new Tornado Alley. Data from the past 2 years shows that large tornado outbreaks with multiple twisters from a single weather system are also moving eastward and becoming more frequent and intense. The Tornado Alley is shifting eastward mainly because of supercells. Those strong thunderstorms with rotating updrafts create new tornadoes. Supercells form when warm, humid air near the ground interacts with cool, dry air higher up. You can say that we're living in the middle of a natural experiment. We see changes in the basic ingredients for severe storms. But we don't know how significant these changes are. Experts predict that supercell storms will become more frequent in the late winter and early spring and less common in the late summer and fall. The air in recent years is getting warmer and moister, and the interactions between air masses more and more common. Experts explain that the atmosphere is becoming more unstable and the Gulf of Mexico sends more water vapor into the southeastern U.S. All these factors fuel the storms. Research also shows that the so-called dry line, which divides the wetter eastern U.S. from the drier western U.S., is shifting eastward too. This line has traditionally fallen along the 100th meridian, but has moved about 140 miles east since the late 1800s. This shift can affect where storms form, as the dry line works as a boundary for convection, where warm air rises and cold air sinks, fueling storms. Milder winters we've seen recently also mean more opportunities for unstable air masses to interact and form supercells earlier in the year. It's tricky to predict how the situation will change and how dangerous it is, because we don't have that much data on how weather patterns affect such short-lived events as tornadoes. The U.S. National Weather Service only began keeping tornado records in 1950, and they didn't catch many tornadoes in remote areas. Data shows that the number of days with tornadoes each year has decreased, but there's more tornado activity on those days when they do occur. The records also show that some years, tornadoes take the lives of up to 20 people across the U.S., and in other years, they take over 100 lives. But now, there are more people living in the paths of tornadoes because the U.S. population has more than doubled since 1950. And the Southeast, where tornado activity could go up, has way more residents now. Texas and Oklahoma are well prepared with tornado shelters, but areas in the Southeast are less equipped. Plus, there are many mobile homes in the Southeast which are vulnerable to windstorms. Tornadoes in this region often strike at night, and they are 2.5 times more likely to cause fatalities. We could possibly have more events like the 2008 Super Tuesday tornado outbreak. It hit the southern U.S. and lower Ohio Valley, and over just 15 hours, 87 tornadoes rushed through the area and caused massive trouble. 57 people lost their lives across 4 states and 18 counties, and many others were injured. The tornadoes were fueled by strong low-pressure systems that brought record warmth. There were supercells and rotating winds that produced these violent tornadoes. Early on February 5th, a squall line developed from eastern Texas to Missouri and moved east. One of the most intense tornadoes traveled 122 miles over 2 hours. By the early morning of February 6th, the severe weather threat shifted to the eastern U.S. It caused wind damage as the cold moved out to the Atlantic, with snow and freezing rain from Iowa to Quebec. It ruined many homes and even swept some of them from their foundation, made mobile homes fly, blew many vehicles and tractor trailers off Interstate 40, and threw some cars on trees. There were wind gusts over 50 miles an hour from Arkansas to Indiana, hail the size of softballs, toppled trees, and power outages everywhere. Some areas were flooded because of heavy rains and melting snow. All this led to over 1,000 flight cancellations at Chicago's O'Hare and disruptions at Toronto's airport. The data from scientists can help new areas of the U.S. prepare for more tornadoes coming their way. The people in authority will also need to improve community shelters and warning systems and educate the locals on tornado safety. You can also get prepared by learning 3 basic rules: get in, get down, and cover up. When you hear the warning for an upcoming tornado, get into the most interior room in your house and stay away from doors and windows. If you have a basement or an underground tornado shelter, hide there. If not, just be on the lowest floor possible. You can use whatever's at hand to protect yourself from debris. Clothing, pillows, blankets, a mattress, or a bulky table. Anything will do. There's a tip that says that the bathroom is the safest place to hide. It makes sense because those are mostly right in the center of homes. In March 2023, a man and his girlfriend in Rolling Fork, Mississippi survived a tornado in their bathtub. It got thrown into the air but landed safely amid the wreckage of their mobile home. But there's actually nothing extra safe about being in a bathtub with a mattress. Closets and walk-in showers that are deep inside the building can also offer good protection. Don't use elevators. You can get trapped inside if there's a power outage. Stay in your shelter until you're sure the tornado threat is over. If you can, listen for updates from the National Weather Service, local radio, or TV. Multiple tornadoes can hit the same area, so it might not be safe to leave even after one has passed. When you do leave your shelter, be very careful. There could be flooding, debris, collapsing buildings, and blocked roads. Stay away from fallen power lines and puddles with wires in them, and don't use matches or lighters in case of gas leaks. Stay away from damaged buildings as they could collapse at any time. Being in a car during a tornado isn't much safer than being out in the open or in a parking lot. Many people get injured trying to drive away from storms. Tornadoes can produce hailstones the size of softballs and can easily smash a windshield. If you find yourself outside when a tornado hits, try to get inside any building you can find. If that's not possible, get as low as you can. Even a ditch or culvert can be safer than your vehicle.
Have you ever wondered why all planets are perfectly round? And what if these celestial bodies decided to break the rules and change their shape? Would we end up with square planets, triangular moons, or maybe even intergalactic shapes we can't even imagine? Well, let's find out. So how do planets form in the first place? The universe is filled with swirling clouds of dust and gas. These clouds, called molecular clouds, consist of various elements and compounds, such as hydrogen, helium, carbon, oxygen, and so on. They're like a cosmic kitchen filled with the ingredients needed to cook up some brand new planets. The first step in the recipe for planetary formation is called the accretion theory. Let's say that something happens that causes gravitational instability, like a supernova goes off nearby or something. This pushes the gas and dust in the cloud and causes them to come together. Because of gravity, these particles start falling toward a central point. They become more tightly packed together, like when you squeeze a ball in your hand. And eventually, they're squeezed so hard that the cloud starts to flatten into a disc shape, kind of like when you mix flour and water to make pizza dough. This disk is called a protoplanetary disk. It's also spinning because the cloud's particles had some rotation to begin with. Now, imagine these tiny dust particles and gas molecules dancing around in the disk. Sometimes they bump into each other, and when they do, they stick together like Velcro. These little clumps of dust and gas are called planetesimals. They're the building blocks of planets. And as the planetesimals continued to collide and merge, they grew larger and larger, forming protoplanets. The protoplanets were getting serious about their size, and their gravity became stronger. Some of them got so massive that they became the grand masters of their cosmic neighborhoods, the planets we know and love. Each planet had its own unique recipe of gases, rocks, and sometimes even water. But why do the planets look like spheres? Well, it's all because of gravity. Let's go back to our protoplanets. Imagine you're squeezing a balloon with your hands. The air inside of the balloon pushes back, creating pressure. Something similar happens with planets. Gravity squeezes its material inward, pulling in towards the center. And since gravity acts equally in all directions, it pulls material from all sides toward the center of mass, resulting in a sphere-like shape. And that material pushes back with pressure, resisting the force of gravity. In the end, they both find a sweet spot where they balance each other out. It's called hydrostatic equilibrium, a fancy term that means everything inside a planet is in balance. But that's not all. Another thing that makes the planet spherical is their rotation. Think about a ball of Play-Doh or something like that. Imagine you spin it rapidly. The material starts to push outward, making the Play-Doh bulge at the equator and flatten at the poles. The same thing happens to planets. As they spin on their axes, the combination of gravity and rotation pushes the material outward, making the planet bulge at the equator. They low-key want to become disks again. However, gravity doesn't want any lumpy planets. It wants them to be nice and round, so it keeps pulling on the material, trying to make everything as compact as possible. Eventually, gravity wins, and the planet settles into a spherical shape. Let's take some examples from our planetary playlist. Jupiter, the giant of the solar system, loves to show off its oblateness. It spins so fast that it becomes noticeably squished at the poles and chubby in the middle. It's like a spinning top with a cute belly. Saturn, the ringed wonder, also joins the oblate party. It spins around with its beautiful rings, and its oblateness is even more pronounced than Jupiter's. These examples show how rotation can give planets a unique shape. They go from being perfectly round to having a delightful bulge around the middle. It's like cosmic pottery, where the spinning motion creates a playful and distinct shape. So now you know why the planets are round. But what's more interesting is, what if they weren't? What if they were, let's say, cubical? Or even triangular? Well, let's see. A cube-shaped or a triangle-shaped planet would have its mass spread out in a completely different way than a sphere. And you know what that means? Gravity would be all shook up too. On a spherical planet, gravity pulls everything towards the center because the mass is evenly distributed around that center. But when we introduce a cube-shaped or triangle-shaped planet, things get interesting. If you're standing at the center of one of those faces, you'd feel the strongest pull of gravity. That's because the faces are the closest to the center of gravity. And as you venture away from the center and start walking towards the edges, gravity starts playing tricks on you. You would feel the struggle against the steep-angled gravity. Walking on those edges would feel just like climbing a mountain, or walking on a super steep slope. All because gravity wants you right in the middle of the face, and nowhere else. Now imagine the terrain along the edges and corners. It's a barren, rocky, and dry landscape. Why? Well, all the water would pool in at the center of each face, leaving the edges high and dry. And the air quality? Well, it's either non-existent or so thin that it can't support life. Not the coziest place to set up camp, that's for sure. And don't forget your warm clothes, lunch, and hiking boots. You'll need them because of the crazy climate. The type of climate you'll encounter on our cube or triangle-shaped Earth depends on how it spins. If it rotates at its corners, each side would enjoy a mild, temperate climate. However, if it rotates on an axis through two of its faces, things get intense. Picture a roller coaster version of our current climate. Some faces would be polar wonderlands, icy and chilly. The top and bottom faces for the cube, and the bottom face for the triangle. Meanwhile, the other sides would be completely different. In a cube, they would be scorching hot with an equatorial climate that would make you break a sweat. Instead of sunlight gently curving along the surface, it would directly beam onto these faces. Talk about feeling the heat. And on a triangular planet, the sunlight would strike the faces at an angle. This angled sunlight would create fascinating temperature variations across the planet. Imagine this. As you move from the base of the triangle towards the tip, the temperatures would gradually decrease. The base, where the sunlight hits most directly, would be the hottest region, just like the equatorial climate we're familiar with on our spherical Earth. But as you venture towards the tip, the angle of sunlight would be less direct, leading to cooler temperatures. But the base is still super cold and dark, since the sunlight doesn't directly reach it. So the triangle would be absolutely crazy in terms of temperature changes and climate zones. By the way, you know that cozy blanket of air we call the atmosphere? Well, on our angular Earth, things would get a little topsy-turvy. Gravity would be pulling stronger from the center of each face. The result? The atmosphere would go through some crazy changes. Picture this. At the center of each face, where gravity is strongest, the atmosphere would gather and thicken. It would be like a bustling city, full of air molecules. But as you venture towards the edges, things would start to thin out. The atmosphere would become scarce and very thin. So breathing along the edges would be quite a challenge, and the edges would be a tough neighborhood for life to thrive. Moreover, a thinner atmosphere means less protection from the sun's radiation and solar winds, so corners and edges would be extremely dangerous for humans. Of course, this is all just a playful exploration of what could be. Our Earth loves its spherical shape, and that's a good thing. But there's no harm in imagining wild and wonderful possibilities, so keep your imagination soaring and continue to marvel at the marvels of our amazing planet, however it may be shaped.
A college sophomore finished her shift at the cafeteria and decided to go for a hike. She got dressed, said goodbye to her roommate, and hitchhiked a ride to the start of a trail. The 18-year-old girl met some hikers who were coming back and asked them for directions. It was getting dark, but the student pressed on, and she was never seen again. Her name was Paula Jean Weldon, and she went missing in 1946. She was walking along a trail near Bennington, a town in southwestern Vermont. The next day, her roommate reported her missing. The authorities quickly organized a search party. Hundreds of people searched the woodlands around the trail for 4 weeks. Her college even shut down for a while so students and faculty staff could join the search. They came back empty. The girl had disappeared into thin air. Paula didn't pack a bag. She didn't take any extra clothes or money. All the evidence suggested she didn't expect to be out for more than a couple of hours. Her father was a well-known industrial engineer. He blamed the county sheriff for poorly conducting the investigation. Despite all the efforts, the poor girl was still nowhere to be found. Her case remains unsolved to this day. But this is not the first time someone went missing in Vermont's forests. A year earlier, Mitty Rivers, a lively 74-year-old man, was the guide for a group of 4 hunters. He reached a fork in the road with his son-in-law. Mitty said he would walk a short distance down one of the paths. After all, he didn't want to miss lunchtime back at the camp. But that was the last time anyone had saw him. The group he had accompanied searched for the man all afternoon before calling the police. A more extensive search followed, but it didn't yield any results. The local man was an experienced hiker, and he was well familiar with the trail. Still, he had gone missing. Firefighters, volunteers, and even servicemen couldn't find the missing person after a month of searching. All that they found was a cartridge he dropped in a nearby stream. The local authorities still haven't solved the case. Nobody knew at the time, but Mitty and Paula were just the beginning. In just half a decade, 5 people in total disappeared in this part of Vermont. Years went by, but still nobody could explain their disappearances. And that's why the area got its name, the Bennington Triangle, after the famous Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes have been disappearing for centuries. In 1949, the most puzzling disappearance happened in the Bennington Triangle. A 68-year-old veteran boarded a local bus. He was going home after visiting his relatives in St. Albans. His family took him to the bus station, and there were 14 witnesses who claimed he was still on it at the last stop before Bennington. But he never got off the bus there. His luggage was still on the rack, and an open bus timetable sat on his empty seat. The man had apparently vanished into thin air while on a moving bus. And there's another weird thing. He disappeared on the exact same date the college student went missing 3 years ago. The youngest person to mysteriously vanish was an 8-year-old. He was with his mother while she worked on the family farm. She went to feed the pigs and left her son alone for an hour or so. When she came back, the woman couldn't find her son. The locals soon formed search parties, and the local sheriff brought in tracking dogs. They picked up the scent, but lost it suddenly at a nearby crossroads. The guy was never found. Again, there was a strange element to this story. The youngster was wearing a bright red jacket. This would have made him more visible to the rescuers. But more strikingly, Paula, the college sophomore who disappeared 4 years earlier, also had a red jacket. The final disappearance happened just 16 days after the little fella vanished from the farm. A 53-year-old woman was camping with her family in the Green Mountain National Forest. She went for a hike with her cousin, but there was a mishap. The woman fell into a stream. She decided to go back to the camp to change clothes. Her cousin thought she would join him later and continued along the path alone, but the woman never came back. In fact, she never reached their base camp. For 2 weeks, 300 searchers scouted the woods. They brought in helicopters, but found no trace of the unfortunate woman. The last disappearance in the Bennington Triangle had an ending. Not a happy one, though. In the spring of the following year, the searchers found the poor camper 3.5 miles from the original campsite. They had previously covered that spot, which made it only more mysterious. It was impossible to determine why and what happened to her. The only thing these 5 disappearances have in common is the period of time and the geographic area. 36 square miles of thick woods in the southwest of Vermont. This remote area of Green Mountains wasn't the happiest of places. Bennington and the nearby village of Glastonbury were founded as mining and logging towns. The living conditions were harsh. Near the end of the 19th century, the locals tried to rebrand the area as a tourist destination, But the mountain was unstable and a huge flood washed away their dreams of a happy life. Residents started moving out. In 2010, only 8 people lived in Glastonbury. It became a ghost town. In the late 1940s, the area was back in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. But how could these disappearances have remained a mystery for so long? Surely someone had a reasonable explanation. One theory suggests that it was a case of foul play. Maybe an unknown person was up to no good and harmed the unsuspecting people. But then there would have been a pattern, and there is none. Or maybe the elements were responsible. The college student went missing on a pleasant day at the very beginning of winter. She was lightly dressed because it was 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside. But in the evening, the air temperature plummeted. It was a freezing 9 degrees Fahrenheit the following morning. In this part of Vermont, the weather is quite unpredictable. It can get really windy, especially in winter. Perhaps the bad weather and the dense forest confused the missing people. Recently, a strikingly similar case of disappearance happened here. A college student got lost in heavy fog at the top of Glastonbury Mountain. When he didn't return home, his fiancée called the police. State troopers immediately went out to look for him, but it was too dark and foggy to see anything. Luckily, they found him the next morning. He got lost because of the thick fog. He managed to find his way back to the trail only after the weather conditions improved. This story had a happy ending. But could this incident explain what happened to the people who disappeared over 70 years ago? The mountains around Bennington are full of abandoned mine shafts, a reminder of the town's history. A hiker lost in fog could easily fall into one of these wells. They could have no way of getting out. The area is so remote that no one would ever find them. The second danger are wild animals. Black bears are native to New England. Local hiking clubs advise visitors to store their food in special boxes, not to attract bears. The Green Mountain National Forest sits in the middle of the Bennington Triangle. Today, this popular recreation area is within a day's drive of 70 million people. People come here to camp, hike, and ride mountain bikes. But do all of them know about the 5 mysterious disappearances? I guess I wouldn't dare venture into this remote patch of Vermont's wilderness now.
On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. As you probably know, the Bermuda Triangle is situated near the Bahama Islands. There's a strange structure around the bottom of the islands. The bottom of the ocean here is inconsistent. Every now and then, some otherwise sandy floor is replaced by giant dark holes, like a living place for some giant eel. The most common problem with those caverns, named blue holes, is that sometimes tidal waves can make them produce vortices and whirlpools. Experienced divers say that they're like waterfalls in the middle of the sea. In March 1918, carrying a crew of 306 people, the USS Cyclops left Barbados and headed home to Baltimore. The ship passed through the Bermuda Triangle on its journey and was never seen again. The Cyclops never issued any distress signal and disappeared without any explanation, making it the largest ship to go missing in the Bermuda Triangle. No wreckage has ever been found. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. A lot of Bermuda Triangle stories feature reports allegedly received from missing aircraft and ships. There are reports about strange cloud formations, tunnels in the air or above water, or the sudden appearance of thick fog sparkling with electric lights. As legend suggests, some of these anomalies are not only capable of completely disorienting any vessel, but also removing them from where they were altogether. Some enthusiasts of this theory draw a line between it and the experimentations of Joseph Hutchinson, who is trying to prove that electromagnetic fields can collide with each other and produce all kinds of disturbances to reality itself. He's done countless experiments in which electromagnetic fields were able to make objects levitate, fly out of the water, and begin to illuminate. Hutchinson himself thinks that similar things may have their place in special places like the Bermuda Triangle. There are some strange structures lying at the bottom of this eerie area. Some even reported the presence of giant pyramids here. In reality, the only giant things here are overstatements. The structures don't look like pyramids at all. They are called the Bimini Road. It lies northwest of the shore of North Bimini Island. In fact, it consists of two strange rock formations. Both look suspiciously like building blocks. Research showed that underlying ground layers beneath the Bimini Road feature nothing but bedrock, with no possible cavities in it. That totally excludes any possibility of these rocks being part of a building. In the year 1800, a large sailing vessel called the USS Pickering departed from the U.S. on its way to the West Indies. The ship sailed into the Bermuda Triangle along with its 90-man crew and was never heard from again. The USS Pickering was the first ever confirmed ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle. It's believed that the ship was taken out by a storm, but because no wreckage was ever found, we'll never know for sure. William Shakespeare's famous play The Tempest was inspired by the Bermuda Triangle. Sailors returned home to England to tell stories of treacherous waters near the Bahamas where ships mysteriously disappeared. These stories made it back to the bard himself and inspired his final play about a storm at sea transporting a ship to a mysterious land. The shipwreck in Shakespeare's play is based on the 17th century ship Sea Venture. The ship was carrying supplies from England to Virginia when it was struck by a massive storm in the Bermuda Triangle. Sea Venture was battered by the storm for 3 days and barely made it to the shore. Survivors of the wreck were stranded on a desolate stretch of Bermuda for 9 months. The floor of the ocean in the area is littered with shipwrecks from all over the world and of all ages. And as you can imagine, this is a sweet spot for treasure hunters brave enough to challenge the mysterious waters of this place. One of these treasure hunters was lucky enough to come across a secret map made from the orbit of the planet in the 60s during one of the first flights into space. This map reveals a lot of shipwreck coordinates in the Caribbean area. The luckiest treasure hunter in the world believed that these coordinates should lead to the remains of the ship that was part of Christopher Columbus's expedition. What he found there was a huge, unidentifiable object plastered with layers and layers of coral. It had long protrusions sticking out of it in bunches of 5 in different directions. 2 more identical objects were found nearby. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Kaiomaru 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area a danger zone, and sailors are encouraged to avoid it. The local people of Andros Island, part of the Bahamas, have a legend in their folklore about a giant, vile octopus-like creature named Luska. Nobody knows how big this creature could be, but they believe it is responsible for the disappearance of vessels in the area. Strangely enough, some giant octopuses were seen and even caught nearby, though they weren't nearly as big as the legendary creature. On the other hand, a giant octopus capable of dragging ships to rock bottom? None have grown to a size this big as far as we know, so this version doesn't seem too concerning. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the rare places on the planet where true north and the magnetic one are in the exact same direction. True north is the geographical North Pole of our planet. Magnetic north directs to the North Magnetic Pole, which constantly wanders around the Earth. Sometimes these poles coincide, and the straight line that connects north and south is called the agonic line. If you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. It won't point exactly to the north. Astronauts of the International Space Station notice the Earth's magnetic field is weakened in the Bermuda Triangle area. This field is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Above the triangle, the particles of the sun's rays move faster than in any other part of the planet. This causes unstable work of electronics of satellites flying in the atmosphere of Earth. It doesn't apply to ships and planes, though. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large, unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Alaska has its own triangle. Since the late 80s, 16,000 people have disappeared there. Eyewitnesses to the Bermuda Triangle anomaly talk about thick fog, lightning, balls of light, and hallucinations. In Alaska, everything's a bit more complicated. People, planes, ships, they just disappear without a trace. There's no one around to tell us what it felt like. In 1950, a plane took off from Anchorage, Alaska, headed for Great Falls in Montana. It was carrying 8 crew members and 36 passengers. 2 hours after the start of the flight, the captain radioed that everything was fine, and then silence. The 100-foot-long plane seemed to evaporate into thin air. 85 aircraft and around 7,000 people searched for the plane. No trace, not even a screw, bolt, nothing. That plane mystery made the Alaskan Triangle famous. If you look on a map, it's a wild and mostly unpopulated zone that passes near Anchorage, Barrow, and Juneau. Hey, I didn't know about the Alaskan Triangle. Juneau? Yeah, that must be an old joke. In 1945, 5 TBF Avenger aircraft took flight for a routine training exercise around the Bermuda Triangle. In the middle of the exercise, the planes were struck by intense rain and heavy winds, despite the clear weather forecast. The pilots became extremely disoriented and radioed the base to report that their navigational equipment had stopped working. The last thing the base heard was, "When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we'll all go down together," and then static. The 5 planes and their 14 crew members were never seen or heard from again. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large, unexpected waves. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. No one knows exactly how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. Another bizarre theory trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charlie Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. In the year 1800, a large sailing vessel called the USS Pickering departed from the U.S. on its way to the West Indies. The ship sailed into the Bermuda Triangle along with its 90-man crew and was never heard from again. The USS Pickering was the first ever confirmed ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle. It's believed that the ship was taken out by a storm, but because no wreckage was ever found, we'll never know for sure. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. An enormous investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. This particular area of the ocean is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On the ocean floor, decomposing organisms let off large concentrations of methane gas that gets trapped under the water. This gas can build up until, boom, it ruptures. The gas surges up to the surface and erupts. If a ship was in the area of one of these ruptures, the water would become much less dense and cause the ship to sink rapidly and without warning. Scientists believe this could be the cause of the many disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. While this theory makes a lot of sense, it doesn't seem too likely. The U.S. Geological Survey has stated that no large releases of gas are believed to have occurred in this area for the past 15,000 years. The ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to high concentrations of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And, naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Since the magnetic field is constantly moving, it might be also taking the Bermuda Triangle with it. Now that people know where the triangle is, it's easy to avoid it. It supposedly moves eastward together with the magnetic poles, but scientists still can't answer where exactly it will be in a couple of years. Some people blame all the disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. There's another triangle in Lake Michigan. Just like the one near Bermuda, the Michigan Triangle got its shady reputation for some disappearances. The first recorded one dates back to 1679. A large vessel, one of the largest of that time, set out on an expedition, yet once it got in the sinister triangle, it never came back. Much later, an aircraft disappeared in this triangle. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean mystery area is another sinister triangle. Off the south coast of Japan, not far away from Tokyo, there's a sea where plenty of ships met their doom, disappearing without a trace in these waters. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Triangle area. You're deviating from your original course and sailing in the wrong direction. There's the Caribbean Sea near the triangle, peppered with small islands. The seafloor here isn't deep. The ship can get in shallow waters. And now the ship is stuck on a shoal, and you have no idea where you are. If this were the 21st century, the ship's captain would be able to reach the shore using GPS and other modern navigation. But the most interesting thing is that the compass would work correctly this time, since the magnetic North Pole hasn't already coincided with the true one for a long time in the territory of the Bermuda Triangle. The agonic line is somewhere far away from here. There are no problems with navigation now, but for some reason, this is where ships disappear. In fact, not just here. Throughout the Atlantic Ocean, there are places where many more ships were gone. The Bermuda Triangle is not even in the top 10 of such places. One of the main reasons why many ships are lost here is that one of the most popular shipping routes in the Atlantic passes through the Bermuda Triangle. And the more ships in one place, the more shipwrecks. Simple probability. Then, it just starts getting weird. Other theories say that there's a space-time rift in this region. Ships and planes fall into this rift and end up in the past or the future. But for some reason, there's not a single proof of this myth. There's no reason to think that the rift is hidden somewhere here. The base of an extraterrestrial civilization is located in the Bermuda Triangle. Visitors from other galaxies steal sea vessels along with the crew, so no one finds the wreckage of the ships. This is also a popular myth that has no scientific justification. The Kraken lives somewhere in the triangle. It's a huge squid that sinks ships and also is a legend that sailors tell each other. However, gigantic squids live in the depths of the ocean. They can grow to the size of half a train car, but no cases have ever been recorded where they sunk a large vessel. And in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, they have never ever been seen. People in the past didn't know about the existence of these creatures, so when they saw them for the first time, they described them as huge, terrible monsters. Giant squids are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth, and scientists had to use sonar equipment to find them. They don't like to leave the dark depths and are likely to be afraid of the sound of any ship. So, that should squash the squid as a suspect.
December 4th, 1970. Pilot Bruce Gernon had 2 passengers on board his Beechcraft Bonanza single-engine aircraft, his father and business partner. They took off from Andros Island in the Bahamas and headed northwest for the Florida coast. Sure, they were in the infamous Bermuda Triangle's airspace, but this was a typical flight Bruce had made dozens of times before. The trip usually took about an hour and a half with no hiccups whatsoever. Bruce took off and started gaining altitude. Strange things started happening right from the get-go. At first, he noticed a small cloud up ahead, but it kept growing. Not from the plane getting closer. This thing was actually getting bigger in size. Bruce had to fly through it, and he came out the other end just fine. He gained altitude, and yet another mysterious cloud appeared. This one was massive, and Bruce had no other choice but to fly through it too. At that moment, it got dark as night all around the aircraft. But this wasn't a storm cloud, and it wasn't raining. Bruce was starting to get worried, and then, bam! He saw flashes of white light. Bruce kept flying for another 30 minutes when he realized this was the same cloud he had gone through earlier when he started to climb. But now the cloud was cylindrical, and the plane was flying through its center. It was wide and seemed endless. Bruce thought he could never get out of that trap. But a minute later, he saw light at the end of the tunnel. But all of a sudden, the walls of the cloud tunnel began to narrow. They were closing in on the plane. The navigational instruments started wigging out. The compass was spinning by itself counterclockwise. The walls kept narrowing, smaller and smaller, wrapping like a vortex. The electrical instruments still going haywire. Bruce was running out of time. He had to get out of this place fast. A grueling 20 seconds later, he burst out of this foggy trap. As Bruce described later, he felt weightless for 5 seconds as his plane left the tunnel. The clouds dispersed, and now the aircraft was in a grayish haze. The men let out a big sigh of relief. He immediately grabbed the radio and contacted ground control to determine his location. But when the dispatcher looked at the green screen, his face became contorted with confusion. Bruce's plane wasn't on the radar. It was as if the thing was invisible. But then the dispatcher said the aircraft was already in Miami airspace. Bruce was utterly shocked. It just couldn't be true. Remember, the whole trip usually took around 90 minutes, but this time, it took just 47 minutes to get to the destination. His plane didn't magically gain some supersonic speed beyond the model's limited max cruising speed. This was physically impossible. The dispatcher must have made a mistake. But when the clouds parted, Bruce saw that he really was over Miami. The plane landed safely, and it was time to try and solve this mystery. Bruce checked the remaining fuel and his watch. After a short calculation, he was only more confused. The plane hadn't gone through the amount of fuel it should have. Archive records show that 84 sunspots were recorded that day, as well as a huge solar wind. This would cause disturbances in the Earth's magnetosphere that could throw off the plane's instruments and radars. But so far, no one has been able to explain how the plane got to Miami so fast. Maybe in the future, the truth will be revealed. In the meantime, it remains another mysterious riddle of the Bermuda Triangle.
It was the wealthiest and most beautiful city ever to be seen. Stepping through its central gate alone would take your breath away with its elaborate decorations and towering marble statues. Everywhere you'd look, you'd find yet another marvel of civil engineering and cultural prowess. Yes, the lost city of Atlantis was truly the pinnacle of ancient civilization. That is, if it ever existed. Since it was supposedly swallowed by the sea in its entirety, it's no wonder some curious minds linked it to the Bermuda Triangle, another subject of endless mystery in popular culture, suspected of swallowing quite a few missing planes and ships. In the late 1960s, it's said that a group of treasure hunters stumbled upon the remains of an ancient city while diving in the Bermuda Triangle off the coast of Miami. Not only did they claim to encounter some intricate-looking ruins, but they also claimed that they found a glass pyramid there, larger than any other pyramid ever discovered in Egypt. A huge glass pyramid on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean? No, that story turned out to be a hoax. Nevertheless, we do know that strange phenomena are still happening in the Bermuda Triangle, like volatile water currents or even the occasional vortex. When anyone mentions the Bermuda Islands, this mythical triangle is often the first thing that comes to mind, due to all the mysterious disappearances or unexplained malfunctions. But there's a lot more to this territory than one mysterious triangle. Let me tell you about it, just in case you might want to visit. For a time after its discovery, Bermuda was briefly known as the Somers Isle, named after George Somers, a British privateer and naval hero. But the name that eventually stuck was the initial name, Bermuda, named after Juan de Bermudez, an explorer from Spain who discovered it in 1505. It's the oldest remaining British territory overseas, going back to a time before even the United Kingdom was established. The island's geographical creation is also unique. Scientists have recently discovered that the volcano that had generated this piece of land is like no other on Earth. Since it has pleasant weather almost all year, it's a great place for golfing, sporting 8 world-class courses, often frequented by famous golf players or celebrities. You might just run into one by accident, if you're lucky. If you're more of a music fan, you would be interested to know that John Lennon got the inspiration for about 25 of his songs right here on this island, including classics such as Watching the Wheels, Woman, and Just Like Starting Over. Bermuda's official online travel guide even provides a Lennon-inspired itinerary, taking you from the Bermuda Botanical Gardens to the Masterworks Museum of Bermuda Art to Front Street, a district well known for its very active nightlife. William Shakespeare himself has an interesting connection with this island. His famous play, The Tempest, a story about a shipwrecked crew that end up on a magical island where they are tormented by an old man and his servants, was initially going to be set in the Mediterranean. But after learning about a real-life shipwreck in Bermuda, Shakespeare was supposedly inspired, and so moved the setting here. The island is also home to some fascinating animal wildlife. On hot summer nights, a special insect that glows in the dark, called the Bermuda fireworm, can be found in protected bay areas. There's also a unique species of birds here, the cowhouse, also known as Bermuda petrels. Believed to be extinct for about 300 years, they were rediscovered back in the 1950s, and a sanctuary was built for their protection. Currently, there are about 300 of these birds in Bermuda, total. Some of the first sailors to end up on the island at times reported strange sounds coming from inland and the surrounding waters after sunset. They even described what they heard as children screaming. So, of course, they thought it must have been because of witches or sea monsters. It took a little more time and research to figure out the sounds were coming from the cowhounds. These birds emit a very specific sound that can be easily confused with distressed human noises. Just as the Netherlands are famous for their tulips and Brazil for its coffee, Bermuda is well known for, drumroll please, onions. Yes, Bermuda used to export an amazing amount of onions back in the day, and the general quality of the vegetables produced here is said to be very high. Bermudians, that's how people living in Bermuda are called, are so proud of their onion heritage that when the clock strikes 12 on New Year's, a giant-sized onion decorated with beautiful lights is dropped in St. George's Town Square to usher in a new year. This is a big part of Bermudian tradition, as their onion heritage is a point of pride for the Bermudian people. The community of Bermuda is known to be tight-knit and to be very friendly and sociable. It's common to say hi to everyone on the street, even if you aren't properly introduced. Not greeting people when entering a shop or jumping into a bus is actually considered rude, so be sure to get accustomed to locals saying hello when paying a visit. Another fascinating aspect of Bermuda is its architecture. The houses are all painted in bright, zesty colors. Bermudians take very good care of their homes, even repainting them every 4 to 5 years. And they can even choose the color of their house without any limits. The roofs, however, are a completely different story. When visiting, you will notice that they are all white and terraced. Here's why. Since there is no public water system in Bermuda, people living here have to collect their own water. And that's what the roofs are for. Rainwater is collected on the roofs and then funneled into water tanks for storage and future use. That's why it's so important that the roofs remain white. Not only is it much easier to spot debris on a white surface, but the white cement also helps with sanitizing the water. What about transportation? Well, only residents can drive a car here, and only a single car is permitted per household in terms of ownership. So if your trip itinerary includes renting a car, you may want to rethink it. If riding a bus is not your preference, there's always the option of renting a scooter. You just have to remember to drive on the left side of the road. It is a British colony after all. This wonderful location is also one of the few places on Earth with pink, sandy beaches. Because it's surrounded by coral reefs that are responsible for the special red pigment, Bermuda is home to some of the most spectacularly colored beaches in the world, such as Horseshoe Bay Beach, West Whale Bay, or South Shore Park. For those interested in more of a culinary experience, Bermuda has some interesting local dishes to explore. Its geographical location and the fact that it's surrounded by water mean that most local courses are based on fish and seafood. Here you can get a nice codfish breakfast, a Bermuda fish cake, or their famous Hoppin' John, a dish made with black-eyed peas, sliced sausage, bacon or chicken, Bermuda onion, of course, and some brown rice, often seasoned with garlic and thyme. They do this last one for special occasions, like in January, during the Bermuda Restaurant Weeks, a culinary festival that you'd better not miss if you love a good feast. For a place to chill with a fantastic view, Bermuda offers 2 historic lighthouses, each with its own delightful peculiarities. To get to Gibbs Hill Lighthouse, for example, you would have to make a long pilgrimage up 185 steps. There's no elevator to get you there, so be sure you're properly hydrated before starting the journey. The panoramic view of the ocean, however, will make up for all the effort. There is also St. David's Lighthouse, which is known as an ideal spot for whale watching. Particularly in March and April, humpback whales generally pass through these waters as they travel north to their feeding grounds in Canada. The National Museum of Bermuda also provides an array of unique experiences, such as the Dolphin Quest. Through this program, tourists have the opportunity to view, meet, and interact with dolphins in a sheltered, natural ocean lagoon environment. Searching for the best hidden Instagrammable spots? Then Crystal and Fantasy Caves is the place for you. They were actually discovered by accident in 1907. 2 young boys, Carl Gibbons and Edgar Hollis, lost their ball while playing cricket. When one of the boys went down a hole to get the ball back, he discovered this magical place full of crystal formations surrounding a beautiful lake. Crystal and fantasy caves attract a huge number of tourists each year, and through a number of recently constructed bridges, they are now more easily accessible. Be sure to wear comfortable shoes, though. There's lots of other geographic, historic, and cultural attractions I could talk about, but I think you get the gist. Bermuda is a lovely and vibrant island paradise that offers so much more than conspiracy theories about missing planes and lost cities. The weather is pleasant, the people are friendly, and there's so much to do on this beautiful island. So what are you waiting for? Book a flight today! Just a suggestion, of course.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.